All right, everyone, welcome back to Fandom Souls. Jean Paul here. Is that where we're going?
Jean Paul.
Jean Paul.
I'm John Paul.
I'm John Paul. And welcome. It sounds like I was like welcoming people to 2020 or some shit. Anyways, let's talk Dark Souls 2, which I think is a game that has probably among the 4 games gotten the most hate out of all of them, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
Because I kind of like
the B team.
Yeah. Dark Souls 2.
I have mine's in the box still over in the corner. It's got a bunch of.
I was saying my Bloodborne one arrived yesterday.
I don't have one. I gotta get one.
You gotta get one. So yeah, like why? First off, I guess we'll just start. Like, why does this game get so much hate? Does anyone want to answer that?
I mean, there's a very simple reason, and that's it wasn't made by the same people.
Right.
But I still think it was a great fucking game. Like, that doesn't, just because it's made by a different team doesn't mean that it's like automatically written off.
Right.
I mean,
but
I'll say
enough reason for people to pick on it.
Okay.
I mean, I think even before people knew that, like, personally, I don't think it's as good as Dark Souls 1. And I think people had such high expectations going into Dark Souls 2. And if it didn't meet those expectations that were unrealistically high, then people are going to be disappointed. And I know for me, Dark Souls 1 is one of my 5 favorite games of all time. So I wasn't expecting, like, the next game to be better. You know, it's hard to match something like that, even if it is by the same team. So I think, I think there's that. And they do change some mechanics around. It feels different, in my opinion. So, and I think a lot of people's opinions, it does feel different. So,
and they don't necessarily want different. They want the same. They want more of the same.
Yeah.
Right. And even like the lore itself is a little more obtuse. And there's actually a good reason for that. I'm gonna pull something out for a second and I'll talk about why. I have to take my headphones off though.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It definitely the lore in the game, it doesn't feel like as important, I guess, is what I felt. In the original Dark Souls, like you said, you were fighting these basically the gods that helped shape the world that you're in. Dark Souls 2, it was it was still mysterious. I feel they still nailed the atmosphere with Dark Souls 2. I really get a very strong feeling of quantity over quality with Dark Souls 2, because I mean, Dark Souls 2 now with the DLC included, there's like 41 bosses total.
And I kind of like that.
It's cool. It is. I mean, it's still a great game. I completely agree that it's it gets a lot of unjust hate, but
right.
So I was going to pull something out, but I can't find it. It's my dick. So I was gonna pull out the Dark Souls 2 design works, and like reading any of these is really good. So I just pulled out the Dark Souls 1 design works since I just happened to find that one first. But if you actually read the Dark Souls 2 design works, what's really interesting and what bothers me is a lot of people blame Yui Tanimura, who is the game director for Dark Souls 2, for why they don't like it, because he changed things up. Hidetaka Miyazaki wasn't involved. But what's interesting, why I think there are some issues with Dark Souls 2, at least that I've found, where I don't think the level design is quite as strong. They do change some mechanics, and the lore is a little... it's even more so obtuse than Dark Souls 1.
Right.
That has to do with halfway through the game, before Yui Tanimura was involved on it, Hidetaka Miyazaki took a look at it and goes, "This is shit." They had to completely change it and redo it. And that's when they pulled Yui Tanimura on board. So they had half the length of time to make this game and finish it, and just had to reuse assets.
Yeah.
And that was something that they talked about in the design works for Dark Souls 2. So I think that's where some of those issues that people had came from, is they just didn't have as much time to refine it as they should have been able to have.
It makes a lot of sense because it feels unrefined.
Exactly. It's not as cohesive. You can really feel, once I found that out, and it's such an important thing to know about the game. And it's also, once you find out that they had so many troubles with the development cycle, it makes the game even more amazing, than it is, when you're just like, wow, like for, having scrape together, some elements and, kind of make do with what they had. It's like they did a pretty damn good job, slapping something together.
It's still a great game.
Yeah.
It's still a great game, especially like the Scholar expansion is just really good.
Yeah,
that's the funny thing to me, is that I do think it's still a great game. And while I don't like it as much as Dark Souls 1, I still thought it was one of the best games of the year, if not my favorite game of the year. But it was definitely up there for me, like that and Shovel Knight were my 2 favorite games that year that came out. And like, it's still a fantastic game. And just because you might not think it's as good as Dark Souls 1, that doesn't mean it's bad. And I would see people complain and be like, I played this game for 200 hours and I don't like it. And I'm like, why did you play 200 hours then? Clearly you liked it enough to play it that long.
Yeah.
You can't say a game's bad after investing 200
It's
hours.
like someone like eating a whole steak and then being like, that steak was shit.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like, you ate the whole steak, man. You cleaned the plate. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just...
I was just gonna say, like, one thing about the game, like, I have probably logged more hours in Dark Souls 2 than the original Dark Souls. Even though I will readily say that the original Dark Souls is my favorite. Some of those changes, with Dark Souls 2, it has way more replayability. I would say.
Yeah.
I found it, by the way. There it is. And, I think that's why a lot of people, and myself included, think the DLC is better and stronger than the main game itself, and really well done. And I think a lot of that is because they had the proper amount of time to do it and work on it. And I do think, I agree with you, what you were saying. I think it was Strippin who you were saying this, that's what makes it even more incredible about this game, is that they had half the amount of time to work on it and they still pulled it off. And even though you might not like it as much as Dark Souls 1, the fact that they did that is a huge accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
I spent like upwards of 50 hours just PvPing in the Rat Covenant.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't even play the game. Like, there were aspects of it that were just really, really good.
Oh yeah, the Rat Covenant is amazing, and there's some really cool innovations in the game too. Like they try to experiment with the Covenants, which was really cool. They have a lot more to it, like a lot more variety in what you can do.
Way more bosses.
Yeah,
And I think that I'm in like 4 people that I know. I like Dark Souls 2 better than Dark Souls 1 because of the amount of bosses.
JP, you're fired.
Like because of the amount of bosses.
You have more weapon variety. You have you can dual.
It's more.
Build great swords.
It's more Dark Souls.
The magic's more fluid.
Like it's a bigger game, and so for me, the game lasts longer. I'm able to play more Dark Souls than the first Dark Souls. So I'm like, yeah, I like that game better. And I know that's gonna get me nothing but hate, but I've said that multiple times now.
Well, here's where you're going to get people's complaints, is that even though there's more bosses, a lot of them felt very similar or the same. That was the common complaint with Dark Souls 2 is, another humanoid boss in armor. Great.
Right.
That's what a lot of people bitched about in that game, was it just felt like another similar boss. So even though you had more, it felt like more of the same.
But even then, it's still like something else that I need to beat. Like that's, regardless of if it's like the same boss, if it's difficult, if it's not difficult. It was like
the completionist in you is like another boss down.
Yeah.
Time
Right.
And I also like the idea that Dark Souls 1, you couldn't play, at least in Dark Souls 2, as strong of a mage as you could in Dark Souls 2. Like, you could play such a true mage experience throughout the entire game. And it was actually easier than playing, like, the normal, I'm going to get the fucking whatever weapon you want to play, a dex weapon or strength weapon. Like, playing a mage in Dark Souls 2 made the game kind of a joke until you hit the DLC. Like that's what I played the second playthrough, and it was a billion times easier. And a lot of people gave me a ton of shit for that as well, because they were like, "Oh, you're playing it on easy mode because you're using a mage." But it's like, I don't care. Like I'm having a lot of fun. This is a great, a different experience from what I had from the first one, where I'm not like rolling around up front and someone worrying about armor. I'm a mile away spamming R2, and the boss is just getting fucking destroyed. Like, there's nothing wrong with that in my eyes. But for a lot of people, like it pissed them off really, really bad when I saw who's the boss that you're having trouble with, man? The Dark Lurker.
Yeah, Dark Lurker.
So I never have seen the Dark Lurker, right? Everyone told me like, oh, you're gonna have such a hard time. It's like so difficult. I didn't know what he did or the fact that he split up. I one-shot the boss and didn't get hit because I was a mage. Because the mage just trivializes that entire fight and makes it a complete joke. And then I just proceeded to shit on everyone in the chat for being bad, which pissed them off even more. But it's because I was playing a mage. Like there was nothing wrong with that. It's just the mage is so
you've got
strong.
to embrace it.
Yeah,
It's true.
yeah.
I mean, that's that whole thing with like builds. It's like, if you want, you could just go with like the Havel mage build.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's the beauty of the game.
I didn't go that far, but I went with the full mage, like 50 int or 55 int or whatever.
I had full cyan armor and I was dual wielding great axes. That was my whole thing.
Nice.
I was still filthy casual decks. Listen, I didn't tell anyone that I put points in decks, but I did.
I did.
mean, But I mean, I think that was one of the bright things about Dark Souls 2 was that they did make it so it was more capable or to do more builds right off the bat. Like you could do a mage build in Dark Souls 1, but it felt like absolute ass until about halfway through the game when you start really getting decent spells for it. It's an incredibly hard build to start off with. In Dark Souls 2, you have more applicable builds that you could actually start with. So I think that's one of the positives towards Dark Souls 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
there's many more ways to play the game.
Absolutely.
I will also say that comparing like Dark Souls 2 to Scholar of the First Sin, Scholar of the First Sin is like a billion times better. It is so much better version of the game for me. I see man getting upset over there. Do you not agree?
Well, I don't think it's an across-the-board improvement at all. In fact, I feel like a lot of the problems that were found in the original Dark Souls 2 release were exacerbated by Scholar of the First Sin. And it's been strange to me to see how like the Souls community has just embraced Scholar of the First Sin like it's this great improvement over the original game.
Right.
It absolutely has improvements, but there is a lot about Scholar of the First Sin that I find inferior to the original Dark Souls 2. Like I've railed on this so many times on my cast, but the enemy layouts in Scholar of the First Sin.
You don't like them at all?
Well, one of the criticisms that Dark Souls 2 received once it was released was that they use it's like a synthetic difficulty because you're not fighting enemies with like good movesets and smart AI. They just throw like a crowd of mobs with you, or they just throw a bunch of enemies at you.
A bunch of shit enemies like this. Yeah.
A bunch of shit, yeah, and they just mob you. They just zerg you down.
Yeah.
And Scholar of the First Sin takes that and it's like 10 times worse in Scholar of the First Sin. Like they just added like enemies everywhere. Another point, and this is the main point I want to make.
Sure.
Everyone thinks it's so cool that the Hyde Knights are now in Hyde's Tower of Flame in that area because
I didn't know that was a thing. That area got really difficult when you first get there.
It really did. I really feel Scholar of the First Sin is from making the game more difficult, just
I mean, that was the main complaint, was Dark Souls 2 is too easy. And they took that and they were like, here's Scholar of the First Sin. Here's a more finished product that we would have liked to have released instead of 2. But we also made it much harder because you complained about how easy it was. So they just added enemies.
Right.
I'm sort of torn on the Scholar thing, too. I completely agree with Man's point that I think one of the big problems with Dark Souls 2 in general was exactly that enemy placement thing where they choose to just mob you with enemies as a way of synthetic difficulty, which isn't, in my opinion, too enjoyable. Mm-hmm. In Dark Souls 2, you go to the Hades Tower area, and again, they just have way more enemies. But at the same time, I do think that there were some improvements with Scholar of the First Sin, and some things were better, especially lore-wise. Some of it makes sense, like that whole thing of like, oh, the Hades Knights are in Hade. That makes sense for the lore.
Well, I just want to finish the one point I was making about the Hyde Knights.
Sure.
So, like, my sorry, alarm's going off. The Hyde Knights, okay, to me, they destroyed one of the coolest moments in the original Dark Souls 2, where you get there, you're in Majula, and then you make it over to the Forest of the Giants, and you climb up that ladder, and you're in the courtyard. And there's that moment for me. It was just such a, such a classic moment where you go, you look in the courtyard, you see the Hyde Knight slumped up against the tree, just looking defeated. Brings back memories to like the Demon Souls, knight that's slumped up against the wall. It's kind of like a Souls theme. And so, inherent in that Hyde Knight slumped up against the tree, immediately you're like, oh my god, I could fight that guy. I really want to fight that guy. And so you have the risk versus reward that, again, the Souls series is known for. And I remember I fought that Hyde Knight, and it's just this epic battle because he's actually like the first like difficult mob that you fight. And if you beat him, and I remember it took everything out of me. It took all my Estus Flask pulls and everything, but like I beat him and he drops that Hyde Knight sword.
Was that one Estus Flask pull at the time?
Yeah, or I forget what it was. I just remember
like 10 life gems and 1 Estus.
Exactly. I'm lying. I'm straight up lying. But it took everything out of me, but the risk was worth it because he dropped that Hyde Knight sword, and I went on and I just cherished that because it has like inherent lightning damage in it. It was such an amazing moment for me and I couldn't believe that they just completely removed it with Scholar of the First Sin. I
That's
was like,
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
It's
is something when I played through and I walked up the ladder and he was not there, I was kind of like, what like, why is he not there? Like that was such a strong sequence where you're just met with this really, really fucking hard guy right off the bat.
And you could skip him if you wanted, which I thought that's what was so great is that it was like an optional, sort of just like the Red Eye Knight in Demon Souls. It's like challenges that, like, if you want to challenge yourself, you can really, make the game much more difficult than it is. But but I agree that Scholar of the First Sin, like you could tell they were working on improving the lighting in areas. Like that whole mechanic with like lighting the torches and the sconces on the way. It's like, what a sadness that was gutted, from the final product. But
which was actually, that was another reason, if we're talking about why people were mad about Dark Souls 2, is they were so hyping that whole lighting thing, and then to just take it away, it was just another thing where people were like, wait, that was something we were excited about. I do remember what Strippin's been saying. What he said earlier, he mentioned it, and he was also talking about it on chat, which just, I honestly, I found the game really easy overall, and then this was like, for me, kind of what I didn't like about it, or one of the elements I didn't like as much about it. And it wasn't easy in the sense of like every enemy was different. It was just the fact that what I was talking about before with every boss being a different knight in armor thing, I had the same strategy for every single boss, which is I would run to their left, roll past and attack, and be kind of behind them, swing at them a couple times, rinse and repeat. Almost every single boss, I had no trouble at all just using that method. And the fact that I could use the same strategy on just about every single boss without worrying about anything at all, I was like, man, this is like...
Right. And I think that...
It doesn't feel different enough to make me excited.
I think that specific reason is why Fume Knight is regarded as one of the best fights in the game, because it is exactly that, but you can't just roll against that guy. Like, you actually have to think about what you're doing against Fume Knight, and I think that's why so many people, whenever they bring up the bosses in Dark Souls 2, like, the first one out of their mouths is, oh yeah, Fume Knight's a motherfucker. Like, that guy is so fucking difficult because you can't just, like, roll around. But for the majority, like, I think Lost Sinner pre-nerf was my favorite fight in the game. But when they nerfed him, that fight it's really boring. Like,
it's
not
very
the same
much
fight.
like lock on and, like, strafe left.
Yeah.
Lock on, get close, strafe left, and you just hit.
Yeah.
But, we touched on the replayability of Dark Souls 2, and that right there, that fight where... I love how they actually have changes from like new game to new game plus. Fighting the Lost Sinner in new game plus, it's like suddenly you have two Black Phantom pyromancers in the fight, and it really does just completely change the whole fight. Which I love that. I think that's a great improvement from the first Dark Souls.
The Freya moments in new game plus, where all of a sudden she's in a completely different spot. I was like, what is going on? So that was really cool. I do like that they made it so New Game Plus was different enough that it was actually more so worth going through than just for your personal conquest or to get certain achievements like Knight's Honor. And
see, I've still never played through New Game Plus. I know there are changes, but I've never played it myself.
Most of the changes are pre the Shrine of Winter. Most of like the big changes.
Okay.
There are people complaining about the fact that in Dark Souls 1 you could do the same thing I was complaining about for Dark Souls 2, where you just roll and dodge and roll and dodge. But there was enough enemies had area of attack effects or various different types of strikes that you couldn't really just do that same exact strategy. What I mean is every boss, I pretty much did the exact same thing in Dark Souls 2, and it always worked.
Yeah. I mean, I did the exact same thing for the most part, except for the DLC as a mage. Like, I kept max distance, and I just sat there and spammed RB, and if they got near me, I would just walk away. And it was so much fun because these bosses, as melee, were so much different and so more difficult. What did you guys think of the addition of this, the Pursuer jumping in every fucking 5 seconds?
Is the fucking best thing that Dark Souls 2 did. I
Really?
fucking love it. I love the concept of you are going through an area and then a boss shows up unannounced to wreck your shit, and you get like one chance to like fight this boss, and then he just fucks off. Like, that's it. And like, if you don't do it, you don't get like the cool stuff that comes with it, and like, he's just there, he wrecks you and he leaves. And like, there's no fog, there's no preparedness. It's just you go into a room and he shows up, and then it's like, are you gonna fight him? Like, what are you gonna do? I love it.
In the original Dark Souls 2, he only shows up once though.
And he shows up on top of that building.
Yes,
he shows up twice.
Well, he shows up. He only shows up. Oh, well, I mean, like you're right, because then he shows up later in the game.
Oh, right,
But you
right,
can
right.
keep on refacing him. I mean, the first time that you fight him though, which is in the Force of Fallen Giants, that's the only time that he'll never reappear again, and it's the exact same reward as if you were just to fight him as a boss fight.
Yeah.
But I did like for Scholar the First Sin when they implemented that he keeps on coming back and it
Yeah.
lives up to the game a little bit more. For sure, that was
then-
fun, especially because you didn't expect that if you already played the game.
Right. And then I think Forlorn in Scholar of the First Sin is kind of the same. I felt him to be more fucking annoying than the Pursuer every time because Forlorn could actually fuck you up. Like, Pursuer, you could pretty much dodge and a lot of his attacks
Yeah, he
were
had like
telegraphed.
once you knew his attack pattern, it was
Yeah.
very straightforward.
There was moments as a mage where I would just be like, yeah, I'm just going to jump off because I don't want to fight this fuckhead right now because I'm on a bridge or something like that. Like, I'm done. I still
How
remember
about
the...
two Pursuers at once?
Yeah, I never got that. I never got that. In terms of we talked a lot about in Demon Souls and Dark Souls 1, just the runs to get into the boss. What were some of the like hardest runs to the bosses for this game?
Oh my God! Somebody just mentioned it already in chat, but
I think the answer is very clear for the hardest. I think
The
you're
hard-
about to say it.
I was gonna say including the DLC, which
Yeah.
we're talking about Suralon. Yeah.
Oh, you don't even think you don't even think the fucking the twin
Dogs.
tigers of fucking shitty ass horses.
Sorry, you guys
Yes,
are
sir.
right. In my head, I just want to say
You had a hard time with this.
I consider that section of Dark Souls 2 that is without a doubt the worst Souls content that From Software has ever put out.
Don't you love those unicorns that keep on appearing to fuck your shit up?
Yeah, and just the blinding whiteness, the nothingness that is the run back to the boss. Oh, it's amazing. I
So
love it.
to date, that is the only boss I have ever summoned for and never killed by myself. Because I could not fucking stand the run to get there.
Which boss?
The fucking twin tigers. I
Frigid
summoned
outskirts.
Really?
all three guys and I would just straight up fucking run there like I'm doing right now.
Summoned a fucking.
And then I would
hyper-
desummon two and use one guy in there because this run is these fucking horses are just the worst. Like they're
Yeah.
so fucking bad. They're so annoyingly difficult to fight. And it's
feel like-
frustrating.
I feel like the enemies themselves wouldn't be so bad, but it's just the environment is just so like demoralizing. You're just like,
Yeah.
this is so. I think my buddy Zeke, he summed it up perfectly. He's like, it's not that it's so difficult, this area. It's like the worst sin of this area is that it's so boring. It's like there's nothing to look at. It's the same shitty enemies that just keep popping up. It's like it just ends up being drudgery. Like
For me, it's the fact that there's infinite of those things. That's what drove me crazy. I was like, there's infinite. I can't handle this.
Yeah, one of the mechanics they put in Dark Souls 2, for those that aren't aware, is if you kill a mob enough times, they won't respawn. I think it's 15 or 12.
15
or something
times,
like
yeah.
that,
Yeah, the fun.
And so, like, running through here, they were just like, oh, just kill 15. I was like, okay, let's do that. And then I was told that there's like 6 spawn points. So you have to kill like 15 times 6 instead of just 15. I'm like, actually, I'm not going to do that. And so this was kind of a lot of the runs. It was me standing next to the boss door, watching the head of Vingarl and Manhunter O'Hara fight these fucking horses. And a
And
lot of
that's how you
times they would
summon them,
lose.
and then you use them as a distraction to run from the horses.
Yeah, a lot of times they would lose. They would fucking die. And it's because those horses are just the worst. And
They
then the
probably could've
boss
used
fight
your head.
itself is so fucking difficult too. Because you're fighting like 2 of the hardest hitting fucking bosses. And then when you kill one, the other one's HP fucking regens. And it's just the biggest fuck. Like, I hated this boss fight more than any other boss fight. And I was a mage fighting the DLC bosses. So, like, that says a lot because the DLC bosses as a mage are just the fucking worst. They're
Yeah, I mean, it's designed because people were like, magic's too strong, so
Yeah.
they nerfed magic, and then they made an anti-magic.
Yeah, I went and got a
Content.
fucking bandit axe, enchanted it, and got plus 10 on it just so I could fight the Fume Knight. Because without that, I would have never killed him, ever.
See, the funny thing to me about the Frigid Outskirts is I agree, I hate that area, but the rest of the Ivory King DLC is so good.
It is.
They
I
kind of like
agree.
negated it in my mind of a DLC that I enjoyed because of the Frigid Outskirts. I was like, I just hate that area so much. It's
Yeah.
so frustrating.
The I think it's in here. This
I
is the
love-
boss fight, just in case people have never seen it before.
I like where their head was at with the area. Like I like the concept that the snow, whatever, Blizzard would let up for like just a few seconds, and that's when you would have to like get your bearings again and direct yourself to the next safe zone or something. But it ultimately just in execution it ended up just being so boring. Like
Yeah.
But like you said, the rest of that particular DLC, the DLC in general for that game was like
amazing.
The DLC for most Souls games, it ended up being some of the best content in the game.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't have minded it so much personally if it wasn't infinite respawns. If there's still those enemies there, but it wasn't infinite, I at least feeling infinite, I could have dealt with it a lot more. But the fact that there were so many, I was like, I can't.
It just feels like another attempt to make the game hard.
Yeah.
That was very like lazily done, or I don't know if they just didn't have the time.
Also, I just noticed your incredible hat, Sam. That's
my Dark Souls 2 hat.
Wow.
I don't know why I only just noticed it.
God, we are so cool, aren't we? We're just like
We are
in like
swagged out.
swag, like
Swagged
we are
out.
just yeah.
There you go.
Let me go get my Bloodborne shirt and Dark Souls 3 shirt. I'll be back.
There you go. There you go.
And then take off my shirt on stream.
That'll get
I
you
agree
banned.
with that.
Don't do
with
that.
Chat too. The Blue Smelter run was a fucking bitch.
So
Oh yeah, Blue Smelter was awful getting to.
So-
Blue
Fucking
Smelter,
awful.
Dark Lurker was also pretty annoying too, just because if you lost, you had to like go back into the abyss area and then go through the elevator and all of that.
I was just
Blue
doing that
Smelter was
today.
annoying.
really,
Yeah. I
Jesus.
was just doing that today at Soul Level 1. It's a blast going through those old chasms of dark. And I thought at first when I went in there that all I had to do was light the the huge torches in there and then leave. I thought all I had to do was just light them and leave. So I lit them, left, and then I realized later that no, you got to clear out the whole area, and it's a lot of some pretty serious battles with some AI opponents. One of them is Havel, and
Oh, you're talking about the Dark Lurker bullshit.
yes,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and then you have to burn a human effigy, by giving it to Grandal,
Right.
the guy who in the wheelchair who lets you in there, and it's just like so each time you die, it's like great, I just wasted a human effigy. I'm gonna have to farm these later because I'm gonna be fighting the Dark Lurker every time. Like for one chance to fight him, you got to burn a human effigy, and it gets pretty rough.
Yeah, that's for me. That's why because since I was a mage and I one shot him, like I have no negative feelings about the Dark Lurker at all, and I feel like I kind of like cheapen the experience a little bit because when everyone talks about like the Dark Lurker, they have like these crazy they have the Dark Souls war stories, right? They're the
Is that
stories
the only time you've fought him?
that was the only time I've ever seen him. I didn't even know what he did before that. And I walked in there and I spammed R1 and I don't think I healed and he died. And then I was just kind of like, fuck. Like I kind of maybe made that a worse experience for me.
So I think that's where everyone has a different Souls experience, right? It's because everyone plays a different build, and there's going to be a different boss that's super hard for some people and super easy for other people.
Yeah.
Oh my
I'm
god.
sure there were bosses you had trouble with that I didn't.
I was
Oh,
playing
yeah.
Dark Souls with Dodger, and she meets Tauros Demon, the very first boss.
Yeah.
He fucking back jumps off the side of the tower and just kills himself.
Yeah,
So she didn't fight him. And then we get to Iron Golem, and Iron Golem fucking trips
falls
and falls
off?
up.
That happened to me
So
my
she,
first run.
Didn't fight him either. She didn't fight either of those bosses. They just killed themselves.
The first time I ever saw the Iron Golem, he does that like slam down move where he goes on his knee. He
Yeah.
did that move and stood back up and fell off, and that was the
Hit
first
that little,
strike.
like, lip bit and
Yeah,
just go.
and I was just kind of like, huh.
Huh.
All right, I guess I'll click this thing. Oh, we're going to a new place. The gargoyles just grabbed me. Like that happened to me too, and I was like, that was really weird, especially
So
after
she like didn't get either of those experiences.
Yeah.
because
We didn't-
It's just like the boss killed itself.
we didn't even talk about Sin's Fortress in Dark Souls 1, but that was like I think one of the most monumental areas
Oh my
in
god,
that game.
Sens is just Sens is incredible.
Yeah,
Dude,
it's a
my
motherfucker.
sadistic self was getting so angry watching you and Dodger when first the Black Knight, it fell off.
Oh, she encountered the first Black Knight,
Yeah.
JP,
and it just fell off.
It wrecked her, but it was still aggro to her, so she spent 20 minutes running and screaming around the starting area while this Black Knight was chasing her, and eventually he just fell off the cliff, and she got the drop.
Oh my
So
god!
Wow.
that
Like,
happened.
she never fought anything hard at the beginning of the game.
And then immediately afterwards, the Taurus demon fell off, and I was like, "This is going to be the moment she has that Dark Souls experience." Nope, fell off. I was like,
Wow.
"No!"
I don't think I've ever.
There was a couple of chests that I didn't tell her were mimics because I was like, she needs to have the experience.
She needs to die a little bit.
I was like, this chest is good, and she would open it, and then just like I'd get like punched, like the works, while she's just getting gobbled up.
See, but that needs to happen. Like those are Dark Souls moments that you remember. Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to say right now, just rant a little bit. Like I wish more people on Twitch understood that like. Yeah. You don't have to, warn the caster of everything that's going to come up and possibly, kill them. It's like sometimes it can be very entertaining to watch somebody, get their head bit off by a chest. They treasure. So just a public service announcement. Don't help unless help is asked for.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Good PSA.
I'm trying to find the Dark Lurker fight, but I can't remember what order I did it in, so we'll eventually I'll find that. But yeah, what's up, Dave?
Another thing that people have been bringing up, I think I saw people bringing up though, is another reason that people didn't like Dark Souls 2 so much. I know you're not a PvP guy, and while I think that PvP had better variety in Dark Souls 2, I think one thing that people were so angry about was the soul memory versus soul levels.
Right, and I've heard this argument as well.
Yeah.
But go ahead and explain a little bit more what that is.
So soul memory was this attempt for them to stop twinking from happening. And if you don't know what twinking is, that's when in the Souls games, especially Dark Souls 1, if you get a really good weapon, you can level up that weapon and still invade a low-level person because you haven't leveled up yourself. And because you have such good equipment, you can completely wreck them because your equipment is essentially like what a level 60 character should have, but you're still a level 5 going and invading a level 5. So that's twinking. So they were trying to stop that, and to do so, they did a soul memory thing, which is by killing any enemy in the game or any PvP player or anything at all, your soul memory goes up no matter what. So even though
every time you collect souls, it would remember.
Right.
Even if you drop them later.
So regardless of what your soul level was, your soul memory keeps on going up. So it stopped players from being able to invade people who were the same level. Instead, you're only invading people who are with a certain soul memory. What that kind of does is limit if you want to play with the people who are the same level as you eventually in the game, even sometimes at the beginning of the game, it kind of limits that pool of people you can play with because you can only play with people who have this certain soul memory. So
it created a lot of problems.
Yeah.
I remember farming 99 life gems, just farming up the money to get it. And people were like, you shouldn't have done that. And I was like, why? And then I was getting invaded by people like, 20, 30 levels higher than me because they had the same soul memory, but they had invested it in leveling and I'd invested it in just items for my playing.
Oh, wow.
And so there was that huge imbalance just straight.
Right, because you can't farm anymore.
Yeah. I had the wonderful experience of playing through the game. I'm a PvE guy, don't really get in PvP at all. So, of course, I started getting invaded by, some viewers out there, some, what do you call them, stream snipers. And so all they would do, they would invade me and then just die immediately. And I looked up and it's like suddenly I have like 1.7 million souls. And I'm like, please don't do that. I don't need the help. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I didn't understand what they were doing at all. What they were doing was inflating my soul memory so that they could then invade on another character that would just, obliterate me or whatever. I don't know what they were doing, but they were basically just inflating my soul memory, just to screw with me. So
yeah,
that was a lot of fun.
Yep. Another thing too with Dark Souls 2, oh shoot, I was gonna bring it up because someone brought it up in chat, but I'm dropping it. So let's keep on talking about soul memory. Oh yeah, now I remember what it is. Okay, so someone brought up this factor too, which is kind of a point of contention, which I'm curious to see what you guys think about it. So in Dark Souls 2, they implemented it so after killing enemy a certain number of times after respawning at the fire, they're just perma-gone. So it makes it so the intention was, again, if you're really bad at the game, and you keep on having trouble getting to a boss, but you've been killing the enemies on the way there, those enemies will just be gone, and it'll make it easier for you to get to the boss if you're terrible at the game.
Right.
What did you guys feel about that?
I definitely use that to my advantage for the Smelter Demon for my mage run, because the Smelter Demon as a mage is one of the only bosses in like the base game that is a massive fuck you to mages, and it was just so difficult. So I just farmed outside and killed like pretty much every spawn in there 15 times and got really massively leveled up. And I was like, I don't care because this run is a motherfucker just to fight that boss for a minute or two and then die.
I hated it.
Yeah. I just want to say, like, I consciously despawn areas not like all the time, but there are multiple areas where, like right now on my soul level 1 run for sure, clearing out the chasms of dark for to fight the dark lurker. Every time you go in there, you have to clear out the chasm to be able to get in to fight the dark lurker. So I already know that I'm going to have to despawn, the area, and so it's just going to be a matter of time where eventually I'll just wander through there and there won't be any enemies there. I don't like it. It's decidedly unsouls-like to me.
I agree.
It's interesting that they put it in there that way. I think they use the despawn mechanic so that they can then inflate the difficulty even more.
Yeah, with the bonfire aesthetic.
Right.
Sure.
Exactly.
And I'll say, for my part, I also didn't enjoy it, just because to me, if I wouldn't purposely despawn an area. And I, like you, JP, even though I was more of a dex build, I had trouble on the Smelter Demon my first time fighting it.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a big glitch that happened to me with him where I got stuck on the wall and couldn't move,
that sucks.
which was great. But
He's definitely one of the big first fuck you fights in the game, I think.
Yeah. But like for me, I accidentally despawned the area, and I was really upset because I was like, man, like it just makes me feel like I'm shit at this game. I despawned the area.
I was
right.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
For me, I had this completionist aspect where, like, I know that knight drops his katana, right? And I really want the katana.
Yeah.
So I'm going to farm till I get the katana, but then they stop appearing. So suddenly I can't farm the items I want to get anymore. Or like the pony dude.
Ninja set.
Before the Mirror Knight, there's like those statues, and they drop this amazing armor, and I like wanted it so bad, and I farmed them, and I farmed them, aesthetic 1, aesthetic 2, and like it wouldn't drop for me, and I had to keep using these aesthetics and make them harder, and then it got to a point where they were just one-shotting me. I couldn't kill them anymore because
even beyond that, you have to use those coins to get luck for them. And since my biggest videos are lore videos, I need those items so I can use them in lore videos. I need to show footage of that. So I needed those items. And anytime I couldn't get a drop, it was so frustrating when I would despawn an area just trying to get a drop. I was like, and I would use all the coins that I could to boost up my luck. And especially, like, I love the Shadow set. The Shadow set is super cool. Only way you could get that in Dark Souls 2 non-Scholar of the First Sin is in New Game Plus and higher. By fighting a boss, they have to be during the middle of a boss fight. There's 2 ninjas who come and fight you. If you don't get the drop there, you have to leave the boss fight and hope and pray to God you don't despawn them by accident before you get the drops you want.
Yeah.
So you're right. Like, I forgot about that. That was what really drove me crazy, was trying to get drops.
that was a big no for me. Just like having them not appear anymore, so I suddenly had to just give up on this item. Be like, well, I'll get it in New Game Plus, I guess.
Yeah.
I think that was the Llewellyn set, if I remember correctly.
It was the Llewellyn set, yeah. And what made it worse is like the difficulty of the enemies carried over. So like you'd get like that specific. I was trying to get the Llewellyn set, and the enemies would be like +4 difficulty, +4 New Game difficulty. Then I would be like, oh fuck it, I'll just get a New Game Plus. And then when I get to New Game Plus, they're +5 now.
Right.
Carried over.
They just add on. What it does, I think, is it puts that area into the next.
And it remembers it. So it was just, I had like a +7 New Game Llewellyn zone. I couldn't even get to the Mirror Knight because I just got dicked on the way there.
Yeah.
Right, like every other area is fine. You get there and you're like, well, just totally fucked.
Get there and they just look at me. I do like 6 damage and they just one-shot me.
But especially that there were certain drops that you needed areas to be like +5. So you'd use like a bonfire aesthetic just so you could get to +5, and then you're screwed for every continuous playthrough.
A bonfire aesthetic is such an interesting item they added, that being able to do that, because
I really liked it. I thought it was great.
Well, it's interesting just because I was going to bring up the one point in the game where I feel like they just broke the game essentially, and I guess that's like it had to have been a conscious decision. And I'm talking about the first tree's memory that you go in to fight the Giant Lord.
Oh, it's where you can farm those souls.
Where you could just when you reach that point in the game, souls completely lose meaning. Like, because there's a bonfire aesthetic in the memory that you can use to aesthetic that bonfire. You go in there, and you just fight the Giant Lord as many times as you need. You don't even need to kill the Giant Lord. That giant head will come rolling down and kill the 2 giants.
Yeah, and you'll get a fuck ton of souls. You're right. I use that to power level for 4 or 5 levels in my recent playthrough, just because it was like, it's ridiculous not to. It's so strong.
You're trying to give people PTSD right now with the Blue Smelter Demon fight.
So I brought up this fight because it was the one fight in all of the Dark Souls games where I spec'd out specifically to fight this guy. I got Toxic Mist, I got the Dark Fog, I got a +10 mace, and like Because this guy, for those that don't know, is basically immune to arcane damage. And as a mage, that's kind of your bread and butter. That's all you do, really, is arcane damage. So, like, I had to completely change my entire character for this one fight. And it was, like, one of the most satisfying fights because of that. Like, I loved the fact that I had to play this fight so lame with Toxic Mist and just fucking walking around and watching his HP tick for 15 every couple of seconds, just over and over and over, and then just dodge for days. Like, that was like really, really cool to me.
I do love that aspect of having a boss that is just utterly resistant to your build. And so, like, then everyone has this different experience where they hit a hump, but it's at different places to different bosses.
Yeah.
Like, you said you one-shot the boss that Man has been stuck on for forever just because you're running different builds, but Man will probably shit all over the blue smelter demon when he fights him. Like,
yeah.
Oh, and I do. No, I completely agree, though. I love, and that just makes for like an entertaining cast as well. Like,
Oh, yeah.
it's funny to me how so many people they get so the nerd rage flows when you're not doing the best strategy available. It's like
right. You're not min-maxing it. Yeah.
Exactly. And so it's so much more interesting to me and so much more fun, like you were talking about, where you just kind of like make up your own strat. You're like, well, screw this, I'm just gonna get the toxic cloud going. Like, that is interesting. Like, that's
I had a lot of fun fighting that fight. The other fight was and I'd never, you guys can tell me how to say, is it Sir Alone? Is that how you say it?
Sir Alone. It's like alone. Like you're alone in the dark.
It's just Sir Alone. They just spelled it with 2 N's to be special. Okay.
I say Alon, but
I know people that say Alon too.
Fancy.
That fight was a lot of fun. Like, I fought that the first time I played Dark Souls 2. I really, that's like top 5 fights for me. It's just an awesome looking fight. How you have like the reflections on the ground, just the simple stupid fact that if you go and bow to him before the fight, he'll bow back. Like, it's such a small little fucking thing when it happens, but you're like, all right, man, you're a cool guy. I'm sorry we have to kill each other.
Yeah.
Did you know you get something special from him if you beat him without getting hit once?
I've heard that. I never knew what it was though.
I'm not remembering at the moment, so I'm sorry for dropping the ball on that because I never pulled it off. But
I didn't know either.
It was an amazing fight.
I don't know if you get anything, but I know he kills himself. Like, he commits seppuku for
that. Maybe that's what it is, because I think I remember hearing the same
is.
thing.
Yeah.
I'm like looking it up right now. I'm like, what was it again? Because I haven't.
Yeah, let me try to find that.
Yeah,
fight.
if you kill Sir Alon without taking any damage, he will perform seppuku as a dying animation.
That's
I
so
believe
cool.
you mean he commits Sudoku and starts playing.
Yeah, he commits Sudoku and starts playing. Yeah.
Yeah. That's for you, Vadi.
That's such a cool thing. He was one of my favorite. He's not like a drastically hard boss or anything. Once you learn his moveset, it's pretty bread and butter from there, at least on just the base game. But it was just really cool. That, and I like the Burn Ivy King fight. Probably one of the most unique fights, I think, in the entire game.
Yeah.
Except for trying to collect 50 of those damn drops.
Yeah.
Allium Loist Knights and their souls. Whatever. I do like the fight. It's just collecting those 50 drops drove me crazy. I think it took me 3 days of playing like 10 hours a day to get all 50.
What do you get when you collect all 50 again?
You can talk to the Shard of Manus who's up top, who is helping you out, whose name I'm not remembering.
Gotcha.
But
she's another evil woman. That's one of my favorite themes in Dark Souls 2 is that women are evil. Women are actually just evil beings from the abyss. And they come to raise hell in men's lives.
There you go.
except for that, this one was actually good. It was the only good one.
Right? Yeah.
It was the only nice one.
He was the exception.
Yeah, this is such a unique fight though that
Alsana, apparently.
Alsana, thank you.
you don't. I don't know. And then just the actual fight itself, after you do this pretty long sequence, was kind of hard. You would, like, the first time I saw it, I died very, 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 very quickly. Had to do all this shit over again. Was very upset, but I enjoyed it more so when I ended up defeating it, because it had that sense of like, fuck yeah, I just did all of that just to beat the final boss here in the DLC. Let me actually just pull up the boss so you guys can see that. I think I died to him. Maybe no, I died to the fucking knights. Shit. Here's Forlorn again. I never actually got this entire guy's set when I played through, because you have to kill him like what, 8 times or 9 times or some bullshit.
Because it's Dark Souls 2, and that's how it was trying to get sets.
Yeah, it took forever to do that. I didn't even have that's what it was. I didn't have all the knights to summon them to block out the fucking doors.
Yeah.
I
was in the depth of basically I was hollowed. I was deep in a Dark Souls 2 addiction when the DLCs were being released, and so my first playthrough of all the DLC was like NG +2, and then by the time Iron King came out, it was like NG +4, and it was like NG +6 because I just kept playing through and I just kept casting that game. So yeah, when Ivory King came out, I hated that fight.
Really?
It was my first time playing, and it was like NG +6 or whatever. And
did he basically one shot at that?
Well,
like every move.
Like my pawns, the other knights were. I just felt like they were useless. I was like, I got to do everything around here.
They do feel useless.
It's a great fight.
Yeah, for sure.
Because of making videos, I always have like 5 builds going at once at least, because I need to get all the different items and like cutscenes and such. Or so. I did have one character, and everyone hates me who watches my DLC lore video because it was my one character I made to look goofy with pink hair and a weird jawline. And I'm doing a serious lore video, and it's just goofy-ass characters running around doing everything just because that happened to be the one who's on New Game Normal.
I was like Lobos Jr.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's like his calling or something.
Let's do favorite boss in Dark Souls 2, then we'll move on to Bloodborne.
Ooh.
And maybe favorite
Mine
weapon
is
as well, if you guys have it.
Song.
Yours
Demon
is
of
what?
Song is my favorite boss.
Oh, the
Wow.
fucking frog boss?
Yeah.
The zombie frog. Can you talk about that a little bit? I'm curious.
What? That's the easiest boss in the game, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's not because it's easy. I mean, it is easy, and I agree. But the reason I like it is because to me it was one of the creepiest looking bosses. Because when it like opens up its head,
You're not
there's
wrong.
that giant skull face in it, and the fact that it was different enough when you first fight it from all the other bosses that you've been fighting, that it was nice and fresh, even though it was an incredibly easy fight. It really stood out for me. I don't know if it is my favorite, but it's one that always stood out to me as one that I really enjoyed, even though it is incredibly easy. I agree with that. It's super easy.
Yeah.
It's a good call.
Sir Alon's up there too.
It's creative. Like when you walk through that fog door, I love the twist where like when you're standing in that room before you enter the boss area, there's that Milfanito kind of crouched in the corner. Again, seems to be a theme. But you think she's the one singing because you hear the song
Yeah.
through the whole area, and so you're like, oh, well, here she's singing here. Well, I'll just talk to her. You go to talk to her, and she disappears. You still hear the singing. And then when you walk through that boss door, you're just like, oh my God, that's what's singing. And it's good call. It is a creepy, weird boss fight.
For sure.
It is a weird boss
Also,
fight.
my webcam's back, so thank God.
Holy crap!
Oh my God.
Nothing. I'm back to
for
JP.
me.
Hello, JP here.
God,
Welcome to
put the
Fandom
placeholder
Souls.
back.
I have a
it's really
question.
weird.
Has anyone died to the Covetous Demon?
Oh, I've
Is
died
that
to,
the
like,
big fat guy that rolls?
The big fat slug guy that just
I've
rolled.
died to him rolling before, yeah.
Yeah, I've died as well. Apparently,
Yeah, I've died to him a couple times. Not my first time, but like a couple times I was like, oh, he actually can be hard.
I just
I got-
wanted to make sure
Weird.
that I wasn't just alone in my embarrassment and that other people have actually died to him.
No, I got real cocky. He rolled, and I was like, oh, so you can
Yeah.
die. I didn't realize that.
Better known as Jabba the Hutt.
Yeah.
Yeah. He apparently has a move where he will eat the player. He will eat, excuse me, not the player, the character.
Right. I've never
and-
heard of that, or never seen it, though.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like,
he does
strips
it.
off your armor and all that.
Yeah.
So
Here's what I want to know. Does anybody like the Ancient Dragon boss fight?
He's my favorite boss.
Really?
He's my favorite
Really?
boss. Yeah.
what?
I loved playing him as a mage because everyone had so much difficulty with him, and I just stood on his back legs. It's like, take this arcane bolt in your fucking butt, just over and over. And I never had issues. I think it took like 8 or 9 tries.
Oh, that is the jankiest fight in the game.
It is really, that's what I've read and seen a lot of, for sure.
I'll just say this really quick. My favorite boss fight is got to be Dark Lurker. I love how it's tucked away so deep in the game. It's like you have to find Grandal in one of these darkened areas. I love the whole concept where like you have to fight through the dark chasms, and it's just so Souls.
And that's what I love too, is because like you've probably had the most issue with Dark Lurker in Dark Souls 2, right?
Yes.
Most people, myself especially, my favorite boss in the entire series, which we'll get to Bloodborne next, it's the boss I've had the most issue with. It's the
Yes.
boss
Yeah.
I've died is the most times in any game.
They demand your respect.
Yeah.
Once you grow to learn how to beat them, you definitely start to love them. Like Ornstein and Simone was one of my favorite boss fights, and when I first fought them, that was hell.
For sure.
So,
For sure. Strippin' for you, Dark Souls 2 favorite fight?
So I think I really enjoyed Velstadt, but my favorite fight was Mirror Knight, specifically when you were online, because
Yeah.
It was really
Mirror
cool.
Knight would actually summon players out of his shield that were in the Covenant that would fight you during the fight. So you're fighting the boss and you're actually PvPing other players in the arena at the same time.
I remember
it was the coolest fucking mechanic.
I
ever.
remember during the Dark Souls 2 preview events, all of the journalists, that was the fight that you fought in that event.
Yep.
And all of the
Were you at
journalists
that
got
event
to
too?
it. I wasn't there, but I just remember reading the
okay.
coverage. They would be like, there's this boss, right? He's got this shield, and a fucking player walks out of the fucking shield. How crazy is that? And I was just like, well, that's actually crazy.
There's the mic
That's-
drop.
It was
that's actually
really
insane.
It's
fucking
old
cool.
monk though. It's kind of old monk in a sense from Demon Souls. But I went to that event and they actually changed him. It used to be a giant mirror knight that was like way bigger than the player.
Yeah.
And they actually made his size smaller to be more same size as the player, which was interesting that they
Yeah, I mean, if a lot of people saying they haven't had it happen, but you had to be connected to online, and I think it was New Game Plus. But like, yeah, it was just fucking amazing, just to be fighting this boss, and you'd like be co-oping with a friend, and then the boss would be like, "Oh, you got friends," and then he would just pop down players out of his shield, and then you would
Yeah.
have to fight them. It was just great.
Man, I see the chat reacting to you for some reason, laughing. Is there a particular event?
Well, I'm sorry, and I was clowning on you, Strippin, when you were talking about like the Looking Glass fight. You were doing this motion, and it was very
All right.
had to
Gotcha.
emulate. I don't know. That's what it sounds like.
Gotcha. Understood.
Yes, but the Looking Glass Knight, such a great fight. Another one of, if we want to just talk about like my, or favorite bosses, just because of, or just by like their artistic design, like the design. I love Velstadt. I'm such a sucker for the Fallen Paladin story.
He is really cool.
I love his opening cinematic, the way like he can like sense you. He like turns around, and just the way he like flips that bell,
Giant fucking hammer.
hammer, exactly, the bell hammer up on his shoulder, and like gives it that spin. And oh man, I love that fight. I love how it's all just physical attacks too. It's just him just swinging that thing around, and
Yeah, swinging for the ropes too.
he does have
He's also
attacks, but
he's one of the characters who actually does have an interesting lore to him as well, which makes him likable in my opinion.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
Because of him following Vendrick and being the most leal knight and actually going along with him, and his fight with other knights was the other hand of the king.
yes, even to the point where like once you get his soul has been like tainted by the abyss. You can see like the how his soul is dark. Just little details like that is so cool.
For sure.
The other boss I liked a lot was what you were talking about before, JP, was the Lost Sinner. I think that was actually a really good fight.
Yeah,
That's
I
one
always say his, or I say a male pronoun, but
she,
it's
though.
a girl. Yeah, and I didn't know that until far
Yeah,
after I'd
Shakespeare.
beaten her. Yeah,
I love the aspect of you could light the lanterns to increase your lock-on range. and
I
if
never
you
knew
forgot
that.
to, you got fucked up.
I never
because-
knew that until the second time I killed her.
Yeah,
Someone was like,
I
"You
just-
could light the walls," and I was like, "But why would
They're
you
like
want to
little
do
things in
that?"
Dark Souls 2 that
Yeah.
I thought were really, really cool. Just
Yeah.
like
Yeah, I
little
like that too.
tweaks.
And when I fought when I fought her as a mage, having that the very like close lock-on distance actually fucked me more than obviously a melee build was, because you want to try
Yeah,
to
of
stay
course.
as far
Yeah.
away as possible, and you just couldn't stay locked on. So a lot of times I had to take like the random, I'm gonna fire this bolt here and hope it hits
I'm just
and
gonna
hope it's
hold a
lined up.
direction.
Yeah, and that's how a lot of times I would end up getting hits in. So, but yeah, that's Dark Souls 2. So, man, you look like you want to say something.
Well, just talking about like the just aiming a bolt somewhere without being able to lock on. It reminds me of like the totally pussified act of using the binoculars. I always imagine the lamest mage of all time is putting the binoculars up and then like throwing a lightning bolt. at
That's actually me. I've cheesed so many just random normal mobs and boss mobs by going into the fucking binoculars, lining it up, and be like, all right. And then I read chat while I'm just spamming R1 trying to kill whatever's in the way. I fucking love this shit out. I hope that Dark Souls 3 has a mage build that's similar to it.
Absolutely.
Oh, I
and-
cannot
Cool,
wait.
of course it will.
Yeah.
To each their own. I'll just
Other people pointing out the coolness with some of that pyro stuff. That with Mytha, the fact that if you didn't know how to burn the windmill, just that was like another element. Which, by the way, didn't
Poison.
Mytha before burning down the windmill. I got really close one time, and then finally somehow I found out you had to burn the windmill.
I had it
was playing-
spoiled for me. That was
was
one thing.
I beat her without the.
I was playing a press copy early, and that was the one point where I got stuck. And since there's a press copy, no one had any info online yet.
Yeah.
And finally, I was talking to some friend who also had a press copy and mentioned it to me. I was like, "Really?
Yeah.
What?"
I was walking around for,
I think it's cool.
I think, about an hour, completely clueless as to what I'm supposed to do in that fight. And then someone in chat who is a subscriber was like, "You need to light the windmill on fire." And
I
was,
bought 99
I was very
life gems
upset.
and just thought I had to live through it. And I just used like 30 life gems in the fight.
Yeah. Yeah. You can definitely
So,
help
Like,
it.
it's like your health's going down, but it's going up, so it's just like this, and then you put like life gem.
Yeah.
When you're talking about Dark Souls 1 versus Dark Souls 2 at the beginning, though, I think for me, my biggest issue is just that I had trouble parrying in Dark Souls 2. And I know that's my own personal gripe, and it was my own ineptitude, but I can parry in every other Souls game except for
The timing's very different, and also they have that other one where you like instead of the kick, they had like the
bash.
Yeah, it like makes them fall in the
hand,
butt.
and then you could follow up on it straight away.
Yeah,
So like if you got someone with their shield, you could actually just like have a riposte.
right. So
It's-
but it was just the fact that I couldn't get that parry timing down drove me so crazy. That was my biggest issue. But it's my own issue. It's just me being inept. But
It's true. It's true.
it's true.
Let's talk about Bloodborne, the I guess newest installment out of From Software, which has kind of brought in, Dark Souls 1. I think Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1, and Bloodborne have all brought in new audiences that were like, that's their game. And now I think people that have played Bloodborne and that's their first entry into kind of the Souls world, that's their game. Like that's their one favorite Souls experience that they'll always have, like the greatest and most fondest memories, because it was something that, it was on next gen consoles. It's PS4 only. It's a very, like, in that sense, a niche market that can actually play it, right? But it's a fucking great game. Like it's fantastic. And again, man, you mentioned the DLC being the best part. I think the DLC in that game is so much better than the base game.
It's my game of the year, the DLC.
Yeah,
Oh, it's
My
amazing.
game of the year, hands down.
DLC is fucking amazing in that game.
Orphan can go fuck himself.
See,
It's a good fight, though. Don't
So-
get me wrong. It's a good fight. I think that's the hardest fight for me in any Souls game ever, period.
Oh yeah, the AI in the DLC for Bloodborne is just way above anything
So we
in
mentioned
any game.
we were talking about how, like, for me and Man, or I guess for everyone, the fight that you enjoy the most or your favorite boss is the one you die the most to. I spent more than, and granted, you got to keep in mind that I played Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2 in succession, back to back, day after day, no breaks, and no other games. Just like it was Dark Souls for a month. It was 30 days straight. I played Bloodborne at the end, and on the final 2 days, I wiped on the fucking Orphan of Kos for about 7 hours. And
Sounds about right.
it was just the worst. Like, that fight is just fucking unreal. Like, he does so much bullshit moves that you're just kind of like, are you fucking for real? Like, is this really how I just died in this particular part?
It was such a reactive fight. Like if you hit him from behind, he would immediately react to where he was hit from. Like
Right.
But don't you like his yo-yo blade? Which is, by the way,
The
like,
yo-yo
plus-
moves, it's the word, it's like it's not the dumbest move, but it's like the biggest fuck you move in the game. I feel like it's one of the hardest to read as well. Like, it took me like hours to be able to know exactly where I needed to be when he did that fucking move.
I don't know if anyone watches Peeve, but Peeve does a very similar thing to Man, in which he makes a character, he names the character, and then he'll play that character like to New Game Plus 6.
I love it.
And Peeve had a character called Vincent, who the build was no guns, only the beast claws, where you transform into the beast.
Yep.
And he was at New Game Plus 5, I think, and he got to Orphan, and he spent about upwards of 50 hours. Like, it was 7 straight days just fighting Orphan.
I was lurking in
Every day in stream for 6, 7, 8 hours a day, just fighting Orphan every single day, because he was like determined to do it just with the claws. And like, he was having fun the whole time. And at the end of it, he was like, I loved that fight. And he's fucking fought the thing for 7 days.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love that fight. It's my favorite fight. But there were moments where I was like, that was the cheapest death I've ever had.
Yeah.
Like, I did not play bad there. He cheaped the fuck out of me.
Yeah.
I can't even remember the specific moves because I've wiped a lot of that from my memory. But like, just a motherfucker of a fight.
Yeah,
I like Orphan, but it's not my favorite. I do like the boss fight, but it's not my favorite one.
Yeah, man, what was that?
I wouldn't say it's my favorite.
What's your favorite one?
I'll have to think about it. I just want to say I like how while it's assaulting you, with its bubblegum shrimp yo-yo thing, placenta, whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah, the placenta bullshit.
He's also assaulting your ears with constant screech.
God, he's so loud.
Yeah,
he's so fucking obnoxiously loud that entire time. And the other thing too that was very interesting to me about Bloodborne, having played it now a second time, is none of the runbacks to the bosses are particularly difficult compared to the Souls series.
Yeah.
They're all just like very quick, right back into the boss, and then you'll die super quick to the boss. Like it's so much more of a frantic game, I feel, compared to all the Souls series. And a lot of people.
My favorite boss was Ludwig.
Really?
Yeah, Ludwig's awesome.
Wait, is that the one on fire?
That's the one where it has two phases. He's like a horse beast, and then
Lawrence is the one who's on fire. Who's the cleric beast on fire?
Yeah. Lawrence is just the
fucking shitbag Ludwig. Yeah, the first one in the DLC.
Yeah, Ludwig's got his holy blade, his moonlight sword.
He fucked me up.
He was the second hardest boss for me.
I spent like 2 days on that guy. He just fucked me up.
Yep.
I'll say I think for me it was either Martyr Ligarius or I like Gehrman a lot too. And like I also like Vicar.
Gehrman was such a aesthetically great fight.
Yeah, like I like fighting in the Field of Flowers. That Gehrman's also another hunter one-on-one with you. It's kind of like reminiscent of the Artorias fight for me in that sense. That's like another one of you that you're fighting.
Yeah.
But I like the Gehrman fight a lot, especially. So
I'd like to point out that the Bloodborne soundtrack is the best soundtrack I've ever heard in a video game ever.
It's pretty good.
I think it's fucking incredible.
I completely agree, and it blew my mind.
It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I wanted to say the DICE Awards, how it wasn't even nominated for like best sound design, best music,
I saw that. Yeah,
design. It's like, what? Come on, guys. I'm biased as hell, but
I was real mad that it didn't even win like most unique environment and like anything like that. I was just like, you fucking kidding
Strippin, you were talking about Ludwig. The reason I don't like Ludwig is not because like his moves are pretty easily telegraphed, except for the move where he jumps up in the air. And the only way
comes down at a random time.
Yeah.
Yes, comes down at a random time, and still to date, everyone's like, "Oh no, you just run straight forward." No, it's completely fucking random if you're gonna get hit or not. There is nothing that will like keep you safe in that particular moment. Because I've done every fucking thing that everyone says, like, "Oh, you keep running," you roll at the last second, or you get ready for a heal and you heal through it. It's like nothing.
I just roll and pray.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. I just start spam rolling, and I'm hoping that like he lands during the iframes, and if he doesn't, then rip.
Yeah. I'm just like roll and pray. Maybe I'll get an iframe on it. It'll be good.
I love his moveset too in the second phase. It's just so fucking awesome. Like, I love everything about him.
Dark Souls 1 for me, Bloodborne just has such a good lore to it as well.
It
like
does.
the story and the intricacies of it, and it's so cool. And I love that. As much as I liked the Souls series, I like that Bloodborne took a different direction and they decided to do something completely different. And like, and also this was also cool with the advertising. Like if you're going to advertise something about Bloodborne, one of the coolest aspects is that it harnesses this Cthulhu mythos and all of that from it, all this H.P. Lovecraft, but they didn't advertise any of it. So it was such a huge surprise when it first starts happening. You're like, what is going on? And even though it's the coolest element, the fact that they didn't advertise that was so great because you get to be surprised by it.
Oh, it was brilliant. That the ROM fight, you reach Bergenworth, which is every single area in the game is just it's all tied in with the lore so beautifully. Like as I'm sitting here trying to think of my favorite boss fight, ROM comes up, but like I think Ebritus or however that's pronounced might be it, just because of the lore implications, the actual fight itself. But you reach that point with the ROM fight, and then the whole game it goes off into like a new realm.
Moon turns red, shit just goes down. Yeah.
I just love that with Ebriatus, though. You fucking find Ebriatus below the healing church, and you're like, figures, doesn't it? Of course, there would be a great one right underneath the healing church. Of course.
And
It's so great. And then when you start learning about the cosmic great ones and the fact that you've got the healing church specifically, like the choir who is healing, like praying to that specific sect of it, it's awesome. And I love for me, my favorite area is when you go to Canehurst, like Canehurst Castle and the haunted castle with the ghosts. I love every time I'm going through Canehurst Castle.
It's really good.
When we were talking earlier, like with the Dark Lurker battle, like all these things that From Software pours their, blood, sweat, and tears into to make these amazing experiences in the game, and then they tuck them under like an entire chain of secrets. Like I couldn't believe, and I was so glad that I was able to experience this organically. Where, I don't want to spoil shit, but spoiler alert, where you have to find that path that wraps back around through the woods. Yep. Up into Yosefka's clinic. There you can find the Canehurst summons. Then you got to go to this area out in like the Harmwick Channel or Chernal Lane, whatever it is. It's just amazing. And then when you get there, and it's gorgeous, and it's again, like one of the coolest areas in the game. And again, a large percentage of the players who play these games like just will never even see it unless you're driven to really, platinum these games. It's like,
Cool fact, it's based on the Norse frozen wasteland Hell, like the underworld.
Oh no shit.
And the Queen of Canehurst is Hel, as in the goddess Hel. Yeah. That whole area is like based on Norse mythology.
Oh.
Yeah, you did the whole video on Norse mythology compared to...
Yeah, but like Lovecraft loved that shit. So like it all still comes from Lovecraft is the thing, but...
Yeah.
Dude, like...
I love the level design in Bloodborne. I feel like they took Dark Souls 1 and they made it like more fluid. Like the fact that you go all the way down into the woods and then you see a cave and you end up in Yosefka's clinic back in town. Like the way that it's like... The whole thing is like... Yeah. And when you go to like Old Yharnam, it's like directly below Yharnam.
Which is just like London. That's actually how London was built. London is built on top of old London, which is really cool and interesting.
Yeah, like London was burnt to the ground and they rebuilt it. It's so cool. But like the way that everything is just in a pillar and you just move like this the whole time.
It's just brilliant. It is when Miyazaki does level design, because that's what he likes doing, it's just always so good. Because he did Dark Souls 1 level design, didn't do 2, and then he came back for Bloodborne for the level design. And I think you can tell how good he is at it.
I'm so excited.
The fact that you see everything in the distance too, always like Canehurst Castle is something you see in the distance for a long time, and then you eventually end up there. Like all the stuff that you see in the distance, you can go to.
Yeah, they do the same thing. Like there's an area in the forest where you're standing on a platform. I think on that windmill. If you're up on the windmill and you look down in one certain area, like you can see the dome from Bergenworth down in the forest, like just peeking out. It's just that attention to detail. And I was going to say this just for like all the Souls games. I think it's one of the things that makes it so satisfying in terms of like the exploration with the blind playthrough. It's like being able to take a moment and like look around you, and it's like, oh, you can see like where you've come from, and then other places where like you can tell like, oh, I'm heading to this thing down there. It's like it keeps the pacing of the game.
There's very few games that do that as well.
Yeah,
or do it that well. Yeah.
Here's the thing. Like every little thing matters. Like the fact that when we were talking about Yosefka's clinic, the fact that if you pay attention to the break in the door, you'll notice at some point all of a sudden she's holding a weapon. And then if you go through that secret passage to Yosefka's clinic where the grave has been removed, you'll notice that to get into the clinic, it's broken glass that somebody broke into. And then you start to realize that someone broke in there and killed Yosefka, and that's how there's the fake Yosefkas, because you see that glass, and that's how they broke in, was by using that passage. You're like, you don't have to know that, and you only find out by paying attention to the details in the environment, and that every little detail in the environment actually means something.
Yeah. I was going to say that earlier, like talking about lore and things like that. Like you can read the flavor text on like all the items and everything, and absolutely you can pick up tons of lore and story from there. But even like you're saying, like even just like enemy placement and what's going on in the environment, if you pay attention to that, you can pick up stories that are taking place right before your very eyes.
Right. And that's also why I think the Souls games should be praised so well, is because you don't have to care about any of that or see any of that, and the game is still fucking incredible. Like that stuff can be a complete non-factor to you, as it kind of is to me. Like I don't really care too much about the lore in this, but it's like I still think the game's fucking incredible. Like,
Yeah.
I have no issue with the game whatsoever.
Absolutely.
There's the door. You can leave.
Yeah.
I mean, like, for me, even if you don't care about the lore, though, I think it still adds to it. The fact that
Oh,
there are
100%. I'm not saying it takes away at all.
Well, right, but what I mean, though, in that sense, though, and I know you don't disagree with that, but what I mean is the factor of, like, when I first played Dark Souls 1, before I knew about any of the lore, and this is true about Bloodborne, the fact that everything means something, to me, you still notice it, and you're like, this seems... It all seems to feel important. It's not like... And this is where the comparisons to Skyrim kind of come in, where they made it so everything was computer generated. You can tell that an artist went in and made all these details, and all of it is actually important, and it gives the place a living feel. And regardless of if you care about the lore or not, I think that's what makes it feel like a living environment.
I agree.
Yeah,
I love
you're not wrong.
the lore. I think the lore adds so much. If you like, I mean, like, obviously there's people who just want the experience of a difficult game and like all that kind of stuff, or like a beautiful atmosphere, or like fantastic level design, and like,
I mean, I think for me,
exactly said himself, like when he designs games, he wants it to be like, if you can see something, you can go there.
Yeah.
That's like, very important to him in level design, and like you can see that. But yeah, I think lore just adds like this whole nother layer of depth where like there's meaning behind everything, even if it's trivial.
yeah.
I really enjoy it.
I think at its core, though, for the majority of people, Dark Souls or the Souls games are about having a big-ass fucking weapon, fighting something that's really fucking cool looking, and just beating the shit out of it and feeling like a
100%.
badass the entire time.
100%. Or getting fucking shit on and feeling worthless.
Or the experience that leads up to that is having a big fucking sword, getting your ass beat over and over and over, and then finally doing what I just said.
Well, Miyazaki, another thing with his design, you were talking about his level design, with his main theory for design and philosophy that he's talked about, is that with Demon Souls and now all of his continuations up to Bloodborne and now Dark Souls 3, is that he wants to give you a sense of reward. He thinks that's the most important thing in games, is getting that sense of reward. And the way they tackled that for the Souls series was, if you have something that's challenging or really difficult, that feeling of reward you get by overcoming that challenge.
Right.
And that's why we remember these hard bosses as our favorite fights typically, is because of that reward you feel when you finally do it and those memories that you get. And I think that's what's so great about it is, and I know it scares away a lot of casual people who don't enjoy the difficulty, but if you can overcome it, it's that feeling of overcoming that's so rewarding.
Yeah,
Right.
and the funny thing, too, is that it continues to sell as well as it does, even though it's not, quote-unquote, made for casuals, right? Like, I think there's enough word of mouth out there, and these games have built up a big enough audience that they could make these games harder than they are now, and it would still sell around the same amount. Like, it's...
Yeah, and like gaming's growing, and more people are getting into it. And then as these people get into it, they start playing games, and they're like, where do I find the hard games? Where do I find the more challenging games? And then people go, there's the Dark Souls door over there. Well, there's the Souls series door over there. You know, help yourself. And that's how people kind of like find their way into it. It's just looking for that challenge once they get into gaming.
For sure. Man, you were going to mention something?
Well, I was just going to say, like, I've had so much to say. Like, where do I start? I was just going to say one thing that I think bothers me about, when people talk about the Souls games, as we're doing right now, there's always this sense where, like, I swear the first thing that people usually start talking about is like, it's like they're so hard, and Namco, in a way, they didn't help the situation by like when they released the Prepare to Die edition.
That's their marketing, is like, we make a fucking hard game.
Right. And
there's actually an interesting story behind that too, which I'll get to.
They are challenging games for sure. I mean, they will test your gaming mettle for sure, but there's certainly, I wouldn't put them on like the top 10 most difficult games I've ever played, like, at all. And I really feel like, to me, they are just gorgeous games, aesthetically speaking. Like the visuals and the sound design, and the soundtracks and everything, they are just amazing gaming experiences because they're just so great to look at and listen to and just immerse yourself in the world. That's really what I get caught up in, and I think it's such a sadness when people just like when that's all they talk about is just like how ball-bustingly hard it is and everything. It is totally that, but like it's you got to appreciate, like, I think what really makes these games last.
You've got games like Boshi, which just look like shit and are obnoxiously hard, and then you've got like games like Dark Souls, which are hard, but also give you this incredible experience on so many levels, and
True.
that's why people like refer and go to Dark Souls instead of being like, "Oh man, I want a hard game. You should play Boshi. You should just
Yeah,
play,
think there's also-
an enriching experience. Go play Dark Souls."
I
exactly.
think there's also a difference between hard and then challenging but fair. And I think that's what Dark Souls really hits is, yeah, it's challenging. And I agree, it's not the hardest game in the world at all, but it's fair. And that's what makes it really interesting.
Well,
is
some bosses are kind of cheap. Let's be real here. Not everything's fair and balanced. It's not the Fox News of video games. Let's just say that.
I don't know. I honestly, yeah, Fox, so balanced. I honestly think that, I don't know, for me, most of the fights, I can't honestly think of any fight, even Orphan, who I had trouble with, where I was like, this is because it's unfair. I knew that there's something in my own ineptitude to learn the mechanics or something where once it clicked with me, I could always get it.
Right.
And when you start doing really low level runs, that's what you start to notice is there is a strategy for any boss.
Sure. I think maybe unfair and cheap are two different words. I should have discerned that for sure.
I mean, there is like some where you're like, that effect is ridiculous. Like how am I going to do this? But what I wanted to get to about the marketing and like with the prepare to die thing, there's just kind of an interesting story. Is Brian Hong is the marketing guy from Bandai who came up with that slogan. Mm-hmm. It was because they got Dark Souls. And they kind of said, what are we going to do with this? How the hell are we going to sell this thing? And he was like, well, what makes it different from any other game? We have to somehow market on what the one thing that makes it different. And for anyone who doesn't get super into the lore, because people didn't discover the lore and how deep that was for a while, and a lot of different aspects about the game that are so interesting. So when you first glance at it, the one thing that pops out was that's a challenging game. So he decided to completely sell it on that. And that's the guy who came up with the phrase "prepare to die." It was actually a Bandai Namco America guy, and made it that way. Who doesn't work there anymore, but that's, I don't know, it's just kind of interesting if you want to know where that came from.
Yeah, I mean, it's brilliant marketing. Like that's.
I mean, it helped sell the game and make it what it is. So
yeah,
even if it's technically incorrect,
absolutely,
it definitely put it in the spotlight.
Yeah. I think we'll move on to some Dark Souls 3 talk. That's not to say that we spent the least amount of time on Bloodborne, but that's not to say that we think it. I think maybe for even some of us here, it's probably their favorite part of the Souls games franchise so far. So it's just
I would love to know what you guys think, because after deliberating quite a while, I love the dark fantasy setting of Dark Souls, but man, Bloodborne I can absolutely say is my favorite Souls game now.
I think Demon Souls, then Bloodborne, then Dark Souls 2, then Dark Souls 1, which is gonna piss a lot of people off, but that's my ranking.
Dark Souls 1 last. That is okay. You're weird.
I think Dark Souls. I enjoyed Dark Souls 2 more. But it's also like, how do you rate? Like, those games are impossible to rate. Like, someone's going to be pissed off in terms of ranking these games. Like, it's such a personalized list.
I mean, mine's 1, then Bloodborne, then 2.
You've killed me inside. JP. Yeah, my favorite is 1 like you, Strippin, and Bloodborne.
I think, but one is a nostalgia feel for me. Bloodborne, I feel, has everything that 1 has. Like, it has lore, it has beautiful environments, it has. But like, I'll always have that nostalgia. It's like the first Souls game. It'll always weigh
for 1. Yeah.
Here's where I feel Bloodborne is lacking though compared to 1, and this is, some people agree and some people don't. But outside of some PvP issues it has, which Dark Souls 1 had as well, the thing that I think Bloodborne's lacking in is the variety of builds that you can do, and it doesn't have as much variety as Dark Souls. While I love the world of Bloodborne and the lore is also incredible and really cool once you start to figure it out, there's only so many weapons you can get right off the bat. And the trick weapons are amazing. They're super cool. But there's not that much variety in what you can do, really. Whereas
that's
like
a
Dark
very
Souls,
good point.
there's all these different weapons that you can pick up that make it so, hey, I can do these different builds.
Yeah.
So, like, eventually, like, I think there are only like 10, 12 weapons in Bloodborne before the DLC. Or there's 10 weapons in the DLC, excuse me. But there's not that many that you have to really play the game and get far before you get these cool weapons. So, and all these awesome trick weapons. And the fact that there's only 1 Blood Rock in the main game to get a level 10 weapon. So if I go through and replay the game again, I really have to choose 1 weapon that I want to be my weapon.
Right.
Because without playing the Chalice Dungeons, which are absolute ass, I'm sorry.
Chalice Dungeons are bad. I didn't even play them in the latest playthrough.
I'll defend the Chalice Dungeons to my dying day.
Chalice Dungeons are fun.
I'm not a fan.
They get repetitive, but anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off.
The only way I enjoyed the Chalice Dungeons was I started watching Trigun again, and I hadn't watched it, and I was rewatching it on my computer while playing the Chalice Dungeons, and just had a zen moment of enjoying watching Trigun.
I think the lack of viability takes away replay value. Like with Dark Souls, I want to play 4 times because I want to try 4 different builds. But with Bloodborne, I kind of feel like 2 builds would cover everything. And so
I feel like the DLC though, for me, that's what bumped Bloodborne up on the list.
Oh yeah,
was because of the fact that they introduced so many new weapons.
And I believe you can buy Blood Rocks now too, if I'm not mistaken. And you do get a second one.
You get a second one in the playthrough or in the DLC. Yeah.
So I mean, they definitely did a lot of things and corrected things. And there's some really freaking cool weapons in the DLC for sure. So the DLC was amazing. I mean, Artorias of the Abyss DLC and all the Dark Souls 2 DLCs, and now the Old Hunters DLC, they've all been incredible. So if
they have like a really good. They have a really good DLC.
They have an amazing pedigree for DLC. Yeah.
Yeah, they actually make good DLC. Imagine that. It can be done.
I wonder too. I wonder like if the DLC is stuff that's left on the chopping block, like when the game finishes, or if they're just like, all right, the game's shipped or the game's about to ship. We've sent it off for certification. What are we gonna do for DLC? Like, I wonder what the developmental process is on that. I've never seen them talk about that before.
I felt like the boss AI in the DLC was significantly improved.
In the DLC,
Yeah, whereas I feel like for Dark Souls 2, that could have very well been content that had been planned or was being worked on. Because it pretty much just fluidly flowed. But the DLC in Bloodborne feels very different to the actual game, in a good way.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it depends on the game. I think Dark Souls 2, they'd been working on it but hadn't finished it. I think and especially you can tell by when it's released in correlation to the game. Like Dark Souls 1, it took a year before Artorias of the Abyss DLC came out. So I think that's where you can kind of tell that it probably was more so afterwards. I know they had designs in place for Artorias of the Abyss. It was something that they meant to include in the original game, but I don't think they got in very far in it.
I think what happened is it became very clear to them early on that like Artorias was becoming like this kind of cult icon within the community. And then so like that's definitely something worth addressing and building content around.
I do want to address. Andres tweeted at me. Would love to hear from us about immersion due to not having a mini map in an exploration game. And I think that's another thing that we didn't touch on that makes these games.
That is true.
Is that you don't have a mini map, and I think that's also part of what draws you so much into the environment is you actually have to pay attention.
But I feel like you don't have a map of any sorts. But at least for when I play these games, I have a mental map, right? Like I can probably make a map of Dark Souls 1, not specifically. A lot of people could do it like super specific, but like having only played it twice, I could probably draw you a map of like what connects to what, how that gets there, where like a motherfucker boss is gonna be, how in the fucking like Tomb of the Giants, this prick of a giant skeleton's gonna be behind this wall that kicks you off the ledge.
You wrote that map by hand while getting your ass beat.
Exactly. So like there's no map 100%, but like after you play the game once, you know where pretty much everything is.
And you can't give that map to someone else either.
No, you can't.
That's the thing. You can just laugh at them because you know the map.
And that's why I think
that giant.
Exactly.
And they don't.
That's why I think walkthroughs for this game are so hard to follow for newer players because like you can tell someone that up here to the left it's going to be something, but actually seeing what that means is so much more harder to do. Like unless you have a fucking screenshot of like, right here is this skeleton that's going to kick you off this ledge, and the only way to do it is to roll past and make sure the grabby hands guy doesn't hit you and fuck
Someone
you up.
said in chat, you write the map with blood.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's 100%.
Accurate.
It's very accurate. Yeah.
For the next Souls game, they need to hire you, JP, to write the guide for the game because you speak their language.
I guess.
You'd be like,
prick motherfucker of a boss.
Around the next corner, you're gonna get fucked.
Yeah.
It's just like the end
of
next page.
One of the best gifts is actually, and everyone's seen it, at least in the Dark Souls community, is from the Giant Bomb community when Vinny Caravella was doing exactly what I just said in the Tomb of Giants.
And
he gets kicked off, and it says like "Welcome to Dark
yeah.
Souls." Yeah, I'll try to find it here real quick.
Obama right afterwards.
Yeah, because he had it modded. Yeah, that's right. The other super famous one is where you see it's like all black and the guy brings up his lantern and then it shows the fucking dog skeleton and he just turns around.
Yeah.
Like, that's super famous too. Yeah.
Yeah. And he just goes nope.
Yeah. This one right here. This is it. Let me just bring this up.
Dude, those skeleton wheels, man.
Oh, this is the pinwheel skeletons. Those are motherfuckers for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this one right here. Like, this is pretty much like the quintessential Dark Souls image on the internet. It's just too good. It's so fucking good. And it's true. Like the first time you see that thing, you're just like, "What the fuck is that?"
And then,
like, that's
and then it
terrifying.
goes fucking ham on you as well.
Yeah.
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 My first time playing Dark Souls, after finishing Pinwheel, I hadn't. I was just exploring the graveyard way too early than I should have because I couldn't get past the Capra demon. So I was like, all right, I'll explore the graveyard. And I started going to the Tomb of Giants and didn't realize it was a dead end. So the fact that I had to get myself back out of there somehow was so difficult.
Oh, because you didn't
so
have
terrifying.
any warping ability.
Right, because you don't have warping yet. You haven't gotten the Lord Vessel, which I also like about the game too. I like that compared to Dark Souls 2 that you can't warp yet. So you
Yeah.
have to really learn the environment.
So here it is. The perfect GIF to sum up Dark Souls.
Yes, I love this one.
It's so good. And
Yeah.
when this happens in the actual video playthrough, it's one of the funniest responses because he has no idea that guy's there, and he just fucking like as someone who doesn't get very angry, Vinny Caravella, in terms of just all of his playthroughs, he's just like fucking furious.
I love the slow kick from the skeleton. It's slow too. When you look, it's a big windup.
It's a beautiful animation.
Because he started his animation.
Yeah,
so
it's a
he's
beautiful
crap.
animation too, and it's such like the developers made that happen. Like that is the sole reason
They were
why
like,
that guy's
I want
there.
someone to run up and try and hit this archer, and the other guy's just going to get foot to face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I played this part with Dodger, I let her go first in the hopes that this would be recreated.
Yeah.
But she was extremely careful, and it didn't happen. I was quite sad.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it was
After
just one of the things,
Sands
right? I just wanted her to be baptized by that kick.
Yeah.
+1 Dodger.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's how she got her name, apparently.
There you go.
After Sen's Fortress, you learn your lesson pretty quick, I guess.
Sin's
Yeah.
Fortress is a motherfucker. We didn't
Jeez.
spend enough time on that, but what a fucking fuck, man. The amount
I've
of
seen- I've
times I've seen people die to the fucking swinging axes.
I've
Just the
seen some
first set.
fucking invader videos for Sen's Fortress with like people with great bows and they hide in the rafters and they'll just like shoot you off or like they'll just hold you up so you get hit. Just oh man, it's
good
some of
stuff.
the best stuff. Yeah, or they'll like move the boulder into a track you think safe and you'll get hit. Like
Good stuff. It's good stuff.
Dude, coming from Kingsfield, where there's a lot of areas like that, I was so excited because I was like, man, it's like I'm back in Kingsfield. This makes me so happy.
I've yet to play a Kingsfield game. I got all,
Sen's Funhouse.
got all excited about them because they're like, well, the Demon Souls is a spiritual sequel to the Kingsfield series, and I'm like, no, I got to check that out. And then I think I watched a YouTube video, and I was like, I think I'm gonna stick with the Souls series.
The beginning of every Kingsfield game is so From Software. It's like literally, like the first one I played was on PlayStation 1. It was Kingsfield 1 in America, which was technically the second one. But you're surrounded by all this water, and like there's a giant kraken thing. If you walk towards it, it bashes you into the water and you drown. Or you can just walk out the ledge and drown immediately and die. It's like
Nice.
first moment of the game. Kingsfield Ancient City, you're walking along a ledge. And there's just happen to be crack around. If you're not paying attention, if you walk onto the cracked ground, it crumbles and you fall into lava and die. First moment of the game.
Oh, wow.
So it's like, hey, welcome to From Software. This is what we do.
There you
I
go.
do love that. Yeah, that's sort of like trial by fire introduction.
For sure.
Literally.
For sure. All right. Well, let's talk. I guess as much as we can. Strippin might take his headset off at certain points. That's fine. And if you guys don't want Dark Souls 3
I'm
spoiled,
trying to avoid spoilers, but like we're not. It's like if we don't touch end game shit, I'm good. So
yeah.
Have you watched the trailers though?
Yeah.
I have.
Okay, I'm gonna play the opening cinematic trailer, which is fucking awesome. And again, much like Dark Souls 1, there's a lot of. I don't know if this is true or not, but it has a lot of people in here that could potentially be bosses, kind of like Dark Souls 1 had in its trailer, which is really fucking cool because the design right off the bat looks fantastic.
I think that's the brilliant thing about this again. It's just like Dark Souls 1, where right away you're finding out these major players you're probably going to run into at some point, and it immediately builds importance. When you run into them, you're going to be really excited.
Yeah, yeah. Also,
I
this. Well, go ahead, man.
I was gonna say I just love how the color palette of the game so far with what they've shown, with the marketing of the game, is so like of a flame dying out. You just have all these like
Right.
Dull
Like
yellow.
embers and
And the other thing too is
love it.
like we just saw it there, but also I've seen shots of the player character. Like he has like ember skin or something on him.
Yep.
And so like I don't know what that means, if that's a mechanic in game or if that's a story or what's been said publicly, et cetera, et cetera. So
Well, I mean, here's where Strippin. I know you want spoilers.
I'm gonna be all right, but
All
yeah.
right. Okay. Yeah. You just tear them off anytime you feel like it.
And same for people in the chat. Like, be aware,
Yeah.
chat. We're probably gonna hit some stuff here that's a little spoiler. If you want a full on blind playthrough, you should probably just leave now.
And watch the numbers crumble.
I mean, that's fine with me.
Exactly. I don't recall, but yes, that is absolutely. It's built right into the mechanics of the game. I forget what they call your character, but it's
Ashen.
like Ash. That's right.
Ashen. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about it is compared to the Souls games, where you're undead and you're hollow, now you're an Ashen, and you have these flames and embers on you, which makes some people be like, "Well, are you in the Age of Dark now because you're Ashen and you have embers?" Maybe you're like, it's a different age, and that's kind of where the lore questions are. But I think what's cool too is now is the Lords of Cinder, and I believe in this opening intro too, and you've seen it before. We're like, yeah, right there, it's playing right there.
Yeah,
So
yeah, you see it on the
the
skin.
fact that there's the giant Lord again from Dark Souls 2 who's back, and that there's multiple Lords of Cinder. There's not just one. The only Lord of Cinder we knew before was Gwyn. That was his title in Dark Souls 1. So it's crazy interesting that now there's multiple ones, and it kind of goes with that Dark Souls 2 lore, the cyclical nature of things. Which I didn't touch on, but that annoyed me in Dark Souls 2 because I was like, we got that plot in Demon Souls. I didn't want that plot again.
Yeah.
It like you get the feeling that like all of these guys who are like Lords of Cinder like had an Age of Fire, and like pretty much it reduced them down to nothing, but they still have that like element of flame like in them, so they're kind of like giving off these embers and stuff.
Yeah. Honestly, I played like the first 3 or so hours of the game, and it only seems to be just getting into the meat of the game. But I cannot wait to see where it goes. I'm just so I just want the game to wash over me. Just knowing how Miyazaki has talked about how this is a turning point in Souls games. Who knows what is going to be coming down the line. I feel like this is kind of like the last big, Dark Souls game as we know it. So there's got to be like crazy shit going on in this one.
In those 3 hours, did you fight the first boss that they've shown?
I fought 1, 2.
Oh, you fought a lot of bosses.
Say I fought 3 bosses.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't want to spoil unless anyone puts the questions directly to me.
I'm not going to ask what exactly all they are, because the bosses are, for pretty much everyone, the bosses are kind of the holy grail of these games. So I'm not going to ask you exactly what they do, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of weird because I don't know exactly what to maybe just like hopes. Like, what are you guys hoping from this? What are you expecting from this? What do you want from Dark Souls 3? Just more?
I'm hoping that it has this. I mean, I've played it, but like, I want that iconic level design. I want to be able to go to the places I can see.
Yeah.
I want a lot of variety in my weapons and armor. I love fashion souls, man. I'm all about fashion souls, so. Hopefully, I mean, I've heard there's a lot of talk of like this one does have more armors than ever before and all that kind of stuff. So I'm excited about that prospect too. I'm just really excited for the PvP. I was around for Dark Souls 2, but there wasn't so much of it. But like the PvP in Dark Souls 1 when it first came out was crazy. I heard like really fun, just happening all the time. I'm just really excited to be in an environment where everyone's playing the game and everyone's getting invaded.
It is the best time to play the Souls games are right when they launch, because no one knows, for the most part, no one knows everything about the game. Yeah. You're in the zeitgeist of like people being like, oh man, did you see so and so who fought this boss and he found out that if you do this then that happens, blah blah blah. Like, that's the cool time to be in it. Not where like you start up the game, it's like, all right, make sure you go to the left here at the very beginning and pick up these 2 things, and then go over to the right and pick up that weapon. Like that type of shit.
Do you know what makes me laugh is Souls games themselves have like an Age of Fire when they first come out, where everyone's playing the game and like it's bustling, and then like it slowly does die down until there's like only a couple of people invading, and then maybe Backup.
Well, I will also
like it does feel like it has like an Age of Fire, and then it like dies out.
Yeah,
Oh.
I will also say that as streamers and man can definitely attest to this, having played I think most of the Bloodborne and definitely Dark Souls 2. Like you have to kind of devote your life to the game if you want a pure experience. Otherwise, you're going to get it spoiled if you get behind the curve. Like you have to play
stay
that
ahead of the
game
curve.
as much as possible in the first week. And that's why I'm a little bit worried about the fact that, like, on the 24th of March, it's coming out, but it's the Japanese version. And then on
Yeah.
April 12th, it's releasing worldwide because, like, everything's going to be known in those 3-week period between the two games.
It honestly
Pretty upset about
is so
that.
shitty how they're doing that. Like and I don't understand why they still need to do that, but that's the main reasons that I am absolutely playing through it. In Japanese
Yeah.
on my stream. I'm like, I know enough Japanese to get by. Because that's the thing is I'm driven. I think even specifically as a caster, people live to spoil shit for us.
Right.
It's like I got to get in there and get my experience in, before
And that's,
I over here ruins it for me or whatever.
for me, the two things are, like, one, I don't necessarily care about the lore. So I might play it on the 24th. But I do care enough to wait possibly 3 weeks just so I can play it at 60 FPS and at a higher resolution, and so it'll just look better on the PC. So, like, I don't know what I'm gonna play. I'm still
And
completely
also, you
torn.
got to like think about like also your experience playing through and interacting with other people playing through. Like
Yeah.
you're going to be pretty lonely if you.
No,
start
I'm gonna be
playing
on.
early.
Yeah, and I'm also gonna be doing shows where, like, we're gonna be talking about Dark Souls, and, like, as the host, all right, guys, let's talk about Dark Souls. And then I just do this for the next 30 minutes. It's like I can't listen to people. So I don't know. It's a very unique position that I'm in, but, like, unique in
Yeah.
a bad way, in a sense. But
I know that I'm sure I'll be having people tweet at me constantly questions about stuff that comes out from the Japanese release, which I'm not planning on getting, especially because I know I should be getting a press copy of the English version, and I don't want to break embargo just to,
do they really have an embargo on the NA version, even though the Japanese version
Yeah,
comes out?
I think it is. It's like I don't want to break that embargo. To be fair, as like thanks.
Why?
Like give me a press copy. I want to be fair about it, but like it's gonna suck, especially as everyone else is putting out all this Japanese stuff. That's gonna be rough, and yeah, that's
The
Pardon
stat
me.
rate-
Go
and it's
ahead, man.
3 weeks.
It's
Like,
3 weeks. It's a very long time.
It's an eternity, like we were just talking about, for like that golden age where like everyone's learning everything new. It's like, man, I don't know why they had to do that, but
I kind of want to play the. I have pros and cons for, like, waiting and playing the Japanese version. Playing the Japanese version might be fun because I could just guess what they're saying. It'd be like, yeah, he's just talking, just make shit up, just make the game a complete joke with what they're saying. Because I'm gonna have no
It
idea.
is in English though. The VO is going to be in English, so you'll still get it in English. What they've done for all the Souls games is they still have the VO in English, but just have Japanese subtitles, so they'll be able to understand the cutscenes just fine. And I think what the characters are saying is probably going to be English VO as well, but it's just going to be like reading items or knowing what certain things do, or if they do change elements around, you're not going to know what the hell it means.
Because for the most part, the only thing that really changed in Dark Souls 2 from Dark Souls 1 was the stat, like, adaptability. No one knew what that did at launch, and they had to, like, figure it out.
so glad they got rid of that again, by the way.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I don't know this. Like, man could probably answer this, or maybe he can't because of embargo. And I'm sure Dave might as well. But, like, if the stats are pretty much all the same, like, I know what those icons look like, and so I should be able to, like, progress a character in the way that I want to, just by looking at the fucking icons.
Also, just by moving the stat, right? If you move it right and only your carry weight
That's
goes
true,
up,
yeah,
then
they might-
you know it's endurance
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff.
At this point, I think we could talk about everything we've seen. I mean, the builds I played, you couldn't level up, so I didn't get to use that. But I know Miyazaki said he was taking adaptability out, so you're not gonna have to worry about that. Man, were you able to level up in the build you played? The
Yes,
first 3
we were.
hours. Okay.
Yep. And I can just tell you there's a new attribute, luck. You can level up your luck, which is interesting.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Doesn't that affect drop rates?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting that they brought back the magic meter from Demon Souls. It's not just a finite amount of spell uses that you have, but
So
you actually
there's-
have a magic meter now.
Do you have an item to restore that? I assume, like a herb, like an amber herb.
You actually have a flask. It's
Really?
like an S2 flask, but it's an ashen S2 flask. So it's like you have a fiery orange one and then like a blue one for mana.
Wow.
And there was you can devote more of your S2's flask pulls to either your HP regen or your magic regen.
Oh shit.
And so for me, when I found out I could do that, I was like, I'm going HP all the way because I just go with the warrior build.
That's really cool. That makes me excited then.
That's cool. So if you're running like a melee build, you can just choose to move all your flasks.
That's exactly what I did.
Right. Yeah. That's
That's
cool.
definitely one of the interesting changes that you'd have to kind of know. I mean, since we know and we can talk about it, that's fine. But like, if you were playing a Japanese build and didn't know how to read it, you'd be like,
What does that other flask do?
So,
right.
man, the other thing that I guess I have a question with, in one of the gameplay trailers that came out, it showed the player character using a bow, and he was just firing off shots like fast as fuck. Is that a viable thing now?
Absolutely. People, the combat in Dark Souls 3 is clearly inspired or influenced by Bloodborne.
Really?
It's so much faster. Like you saw, like you could snap some shots off from the bow, like right after a roll. It is so fun. That's just all I could really say.
You got weapon arts as well now.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
With the bow thing, I was just going to add on to that. That's something Miyazaki was talking about last year around E3 time. And it's something where you have different size bows. So a short bow, you can do that. You can essentially be Robin Hood, and that's what he wanted, where you can roll around, fire your bow, and all that. Then you have your larger great bows where they act like bows used to be. So it's going to depend on your bow size.
Okay.
And then, yeah, Serpent, you were mentioning weapon art, so you can go into that.
The weapon arts.
That's saying 1K hype, JP, 1K shirts.
Yeah, but we're on a show. I don't give a fuck about that, man.
Cool.
Talk to me about the weapon arts.
That's cool, man.
Celebrate 1,000 shirts.
Yeah,
I'll do it afterwards.
1,000 fucking shirts.
We'll do it afterwards. Tell me about the weapon arts.
Here's 1,000 shirts.
God damn it.
I just want to say I was
I'll
worried.
raise a different mic to you.
Yeah, there you go. At first, when I learned about the weapon arts, I thought, well, this is cool.
Yeah.
And what it seemed like to me was it was similar to like the sort of trick weapon usage where, with whatever the weapon type is, like there was like a special, alternate attack style that you could use. And I thought, well, this is cool, but it seems to kind of like lock you into having a certain, weapon loadout.
Oh.
And, but I found out that was not an issue. You can still, equip whatever weapon you want in either hand. It's just a matter of like what weapon arts will be available to you, if you go with that loadout.
Fuck, man. I might just have to play it in 14 days.
Also, like
they
they refined dual wielding, right? So like dual wielding is one weapon now, and it splits into two, and it has like actual combos and
yeah.
stuff.
A question, since you said you've killed 3 bosses, like did you play just the normal, I'm gonna get a fucking weapon and a shield and just attack these guys, and it like could you see these other playstyles actually being strong, or is just the bread and butter and it's always going to be strong? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yes, I do. At the event, after we were done playing, we had that sort of like the mini meeting where like we all got together and we're like exchanging stories of like, what we did and what, the items we found.
Right.
And what was so incredible, even just within the first 3 hours of the game, everybody took like such completely different paths. People were finding like weapons that other people didn't find. There were just so many secrets and so many different like crazy things that people found. I don't know, among the people I talked to, everybody kind of went the knight route where it was just like, sword and board, and they just went in
the default Dark Souls route, kind of.
Right. And so I don't think there was much diversity there. But I can only imagine that the other builds in the game are just as viable as just the strength build. But I don't know. Nobody really experimented much there.
The thing I wanted to mention about weapon arts, though, is that it's essentially you sort of equip it on, and then it replaces your parry when you're going to parry. So it's just instead of the parry moveset, you have the weapon art, and you can turn it off fine. So depending on your play style, you may or may not be using that more or less. So it'll probably come in handy for bosses a lot. If at least that's how I go. I tend to two-hand more when I'm facing bosses, and then I parry a lot when I'm facing normal enemies.
Mhm.
I imagine for me, I won't be using the weapon arts too much until I come across bosses, but it's going to depend on your playstyle completely. So it's just essentially
What
part of your moveset.
what's an example of like a weapon art? Like what when you say weapon art, what is that?
So say you have these dual blade katana type of things. If you use the weapon art version of it, you're going to do this crazy spin attack with them that using both of them at once.
Gotcha.
For one of them, that's a great sword. You do this power stance, and then a giant swing attack that knocks enemies up. And that power stance gives you all this poise, so you're not going to get knocked down while you're doing that. So you
Ooh.
can go ahead.
So your character kind of changes, JP. Like he changes stance.
Did they have that
And
in the
then
PAX build that we
You
played?
get like a huge. Yeah, they did. Yeah.
I guess I just never used it.
Yeah, you must not use it, but you basically change stance, and then you have like a shield breaking move, or like a huge cleave move.
Yeah.
And it has like tons of poise, and then like every weapon has its own, kind of.
Can you, man? Since you played the PAX build, right?
Yes, I did.
So did you play that in the first 3 hours, that area, or was that somewhere else in the game?
Yes, that area was in the first 3 hours.
All right. I'm just curious. I'm asking like inside baseball questions.
He's been
now.
so careful about what he says.
Well, I know, because I know myself. I am neurotic about spoilers.
Right. I've gotten to the point where it's kind of like that. I just want to know that information. It doesn't bother me too much.
And of course,
Yeah. Yeah. So
but yes, it was in that area.
that makes me wonder, like, what the fuck else is in that game? Like, 3 hours in Dark Souls is really not that much. And if you already killed 3 bosses, like, I wonder how long that game is.
One thing I guess I wanted to mention was they did. Well, they made it easier. It was they lowered the difficulty. Yeah, they did. From Software did say that for the whatever the press release versions, whatever
They said that about PAX as well, that they bumped down the difficulty.
Yeah,
I've never noticed when they say that stuff. I never, when I go play it afterwards after playing a press version, that it's easier or harder. I never really noticed, to be honest, because I played like 2 versions of Dark Souls 2 before I played Dark Souls 2. Two different press versions. I played a press version of Bloodborne before I played Bloodborne, and I've honestly never really noticed too much difference.
It's kind of a weird thing because, like, the normal when you hear coverage of a Dark Souls event before influencers like Man and Dave and Strippin were invited out there, the general press was like, "Oh man, that game's so hard! Like, fuck, that game's so goddamn." And they told us, you know what they told us? They toned the difficulty down. And then that's the line that comes out of there. And then, like, all the fucking Dark Souls fanboys circle jerk on each other, like, they turn the difficulty down. They turn the difficulty down, just nonstop. So, like, I really wonder if that's true, and like
how much harder,
and also how hard would it be to do that? Like, is it just they go and change the the values of a boss or a mob HP, or like what does that mean? I don't know.
I've honestly never noticed, and maybe they actually do, but I've never gone and played the real game. I'm like, wow, this is so much harder than the press build I played.
Yeah,
like it changes, but usually the changes are like Dark Souls 2, where the lighting was different, or in Bloodborne, you see the fucking amygdala, pronounced amygdala in Bloodborne, like on a giant building in the press build version, and then they moved the location of it, and then who was it? Father Gascoigne can help you fight the cleric beast right away in the press version.
When I was at PAX, I was speaking to a couple of the Bandai guys, and they basically said that they toned down the damage that the enemies deal, just to basically keep people's interest when playing the game. Because if you walk up and you queue up for 3 hours and then you just get killed like outright at the first enemy 4 times in a row, like that's it. You don't like that game.
Yeah.
So like they toned down the damage just enough that people like could make it a little bit all the ways in and just get to try out the game. And
that
stuff.
makes sense, I suppose.
You know what also makes it hard to tell though is that when you start playing the game yourself, you're gonna level up however you want to level up and wear whatever you're gonna choose. So it also makes it harder to tell because maybe they are giving you an easier build, but they have it so you have armor that would suck or something like that.
Yeah, or maybe they like pumped 20 vit into the character to give it more health or something. Yeah,
it's possible. Yeah. Well, I think that's it. I think we all wait for Dark Souls 3 now. Or in some cases, like we just go play more Dark Souls.
That's probably what I'm going to be doing. I'll just be continuing my...
I've already played today. I have had my share of stress. I'm going to go relax.
Yeah.
Dark Souls 3
I'm not going to be streaming.
So
but yeah. Soul Level 1 run is probably going to take me right up to the Japanese Dark Souls 3 release.
Good luck with your boss and with that.
If you're already on Lurker though, and you're Soul Level 1.
Yes.
So you're about halfway through then, right?
I think I've got like 26 of 41 bosses down, something like that. So all the DLC yet to go. It's gonna be a blast.
That DLC,
That's gonna be so hard at level 1.
I can't really imagine the DLC, especially the first DLC on Soul Level 1. That
I'd be pretty eager to see your soul memory at level 1 when you're like about to beat the game. Just getting invaded by like level 200s or something.
I've had some invasions already because I'm I get souls all the time and then I just blow them on like 99 life gems or whatever.
Yeah.
Have fun in that frigid tundra.
Yay! It's.
yeah. Are you
with this much health?
I'll despawn the entire valley.
I don't know if you can despawn the frigid tundra though.
I swear I did it once.
Yeah, I've been told you can despawn the different. There's like 6 spawn points of those horses.
It's just a bitch. It's not fun.
I just realized that you have to kill that boss now with Soul Level 1. It'll
be fun.
I've watched Lobos do that area on like a speed run, and it's the one area where he'll go in there and be like, "All right, let's see if they fuck me over today," and then he'll get fucked over and he'll just reset it.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it happens. He said it happens a lot. Like he hates it.
Area. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I can't. That's why I don't speed run. It's just the build up to one fuck up where it's like, oh, we're done.
It's a 45 or I don't know what the speed run is, but it's a 30-minute plus like build up to one thing that could just happen, and then you're fucked. So that's a motherfucker. That's
why guys.
Have you guys seen the Dark Souls 1 fastest speed run?
What isn't it?
Have you seen how they do it?
Is it down to like 30? Are you talking about the 30-minute run one?
I think
the one where they go to the door to Gwyn and then pull out their modem cable of their Xbox, which sends the game back to the main menu. Then they load it back up and they phase through the door into the kiln, so they don't get the Lord Souls.
Oh.
They like go to the door, rip out their Ethernet cable, and then it glitches them through the door, and that's how the speedrun's done.
Wow.
I usually watch.
Figured that out.
I don't know.
Just
amazing.
Blows my mind. Yeah.
I usually watch the full percent speedruns just because I enjoy seeing the strategies they come up with.
Yeah, me too.
I usually don't watch any percent as well. I mean, any percent as long as
all boss speedruns. They're the ones I enjoy. Yeah.
Right, because it's just like it's so cool to see the method where you go to New Londo first and shoot, and then take the arrows with you.
Yeah. If I'm seeing the correct time with the Black Knight Greatsword route, it's 1 hour 18 minutes. 10 seconds for all boss.
It looks like they patched out that like kiln. They called it the kiln skip or kiln slip. I don't know.
Yeah, apparently that's a super old speedrun, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, let's do some shout outs here and call it a show. We've been going for about 4 hours now, so that's actually much longer than I thought it was going to be. I was expecting 2, but that's
Time
what happens
when
with
you're
Dark
talking
Souls.
Souls.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Man, why don't you start us off? Talk about what you're going to be doing, where you can be looked at on the internet, etc.
I am Man of MANvsGAME here on Twitch. You can follow me here. I'll just put something in the chat. You can follow me on Twitter. That's where I normally embarrass myself outside of my cast. Just check me out. I'm playing Dark Souls 2, Scholar of the First Sin, Soul Level 1, all boss clear, leading up to Dark Souls 3 Japanese release on either March 23rd or 24th. Whenever I get the chance to play it first, I'll be live, and following me on Twitter is the best place to keep up on that information. Otherwise, thanks for having me, JP, and it's been a blast talking with you guys.
Awesome stuff. Thanks for being here, man. Strippin, do some shout outs for us.
All right. Thanks for having me, man. It's not every day you get to just shoot the shit about Dark Souls for 4 hours. So, that was great. Strippin was my husband, but since left me for another.
Yep.
There we go. Thanks for having me. My name's Strippin. You can find me on Twitch, channel Strippin, and YouTube, the channel is Strippin. You can find me on Twitter at Strippin. It's all pretty straightforward. I love the Souls games. I'm a bit of a lore nerd when it comes to any game, really. I just finished Dark Souls 1. I'm probably going to be playing Dark Souls 2 before 3 launches just to wet my beak. This has been great fun.
Awesome stuff. And last but not least, Dave, thanks for being here, man. Do some shout outs.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. Once again, my name is Dave. I go by Dave Control on YouTube, Dave Control Live, and I'll tweet that out or not tweet that out, but send that out in the chat. I do Twitch stream as well, but what I'm most known for is YouTube and my YouTube content, especially for Souls.
He has amazing Souls YouTube content, so you should go check it out.
Yeah, thanks,
really good. It's really good.
It's definitely where I'm most known. Like I have, I think, almost 30 videos on the lore of just Souls and Souls 2, and then with Bloodborne, it's over 30 videos on lore. And then I do comedy videos as well. I've had like big collaboration videos, and I also like doing other stuff. So I do like sort of comedy retrospectives that people compare to JonTron, that sort of style. So big multitude of things. So yeah, do you like Souls or other stuff? I hope you check it out. And thanks so much for having me on. And man, I owe you an apology. Apparently, I've been interrupting you a lot, so I'm sorry.
You know, I saw it in the chat, and I'm just like, don't even worry about it, dude. It's like not even an issue. It's like what it is. People love making drama.
Wait. I'm gonna let you finish. But I want to say sorry.
The truth is, I don't have much to say most of the time anyway. So there you go.
That's true.
I just like looking like I do.
But you guys are all wonderful people, so it's been amazing. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks so much for coming on, guys. It was a fun episode. Typically, these go about 3 hours, but I felt like we could actually go for another 2 just talking about nonsense in the Souls world.
We barely touched Bloodborne.
We didn't spend too long on Bloodborne.
We didn't talk about any lore for any game.
Yeah.
I barely got to talk at all. So I mean,
I'm sorry. Were you saying something? Because I wasn't listening.
There's no reason to.
There you go. All right, that's gonna do it, guys. Thanks everyone for watching Fandom Souls. The first hour should be up on YouTube in just a little bit, and then I'll get hour 2 posted as well. So we'll see you guys later. Have a great evening, and happy Dark Souls 3 day in about 14 days, or in 3 weeks. 5 weeks.
Enjoy it or enjoy avoiding spoilers.
Yeah.
Have fun with the gauntlet of life.
God, that's going to be the worst. All right, we're out, guys. Have a good night. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.